It's Mail It In Friday.
Yeah, well, the dude abides.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Well, it is Mail It In Friday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brother Mike DiStefano with you. Welcome aboard to OverDrive for a Friday, July 4th. Yeah, yes, guy. Everything good?
Happy Independence Day to the all the Americans except for the Yankees.
Yeah.
Good riddance to the Yankees.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it was such a great thing to see over the course of these last 4 days. The Blue Jays on Canada Day, what they did leading up to July 4th, put an absolute butt-whooping on the pinstripes and the NL East foes. Second place Yankees, I might add. Second place
for now.
Yankees for now. We're talking today, Tab.
Things could change in the next couple of hours because they're already playing against the Mets. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, we enjoy the occasion. We'll deal with that Jays sweep over the Yankees throughout the course of the next 3 hours, but a lot here. Coming up later on, Matthew Shinetti will stop by, Mark Masters, Yes Guy, No Guy, Richard Griffin, Bruce Boudreau, and maybe some other hijinks planned and unplanned. So, the 4 games, it's an ensemble cast. Clearly there's some headliners, but it's everybody. How do you sweep the Yankees? It takes everybody. There's some great moments there. Hoffman gets pushed to the limit, a 14-pitch at bat from Lucas that turns the tide last night. But in terms of that series, in a regular season performance by the Jays, I don't know how far you want to go back, but how good is that series? Is it at the top of the list, or
how about
in regular season?
How about the first time you've ever swept the Yankees at home in your history? I mean, You'll take that all day, right? I mean, and for all the talk about the Blue Jays, and this is emanating from New York mostly, although various analytics people will chime in on this. The fact the Blue Jays don't look like much of a juggernaut because their run differential right now is a +9, right? Where the Yankees are a +100 and the Rays are a +69. You know what? Sometimes it doesn't come down to run differential. It comes down to making plays. They make, like, to your point, a 14-pitch at bat in a big moment.
Yeah.
It goes a lot to showing why the Jays, one of the key records that a lot of people are pointing to, they're 26-17 in games decided by 2 runs or less. So in tight games, they've been really good. The Yankees are 16-25 in those games. So that is the separator between these two teams right now. Now, you might say over the long haul, the Jays might have a hard time keeping this up, but they're keeping it up as it is. And I think that says something about the mettle of this team.
Yeah, well, each of these games were pretty tight, too. Like, going right down to it. It looked like there could have been a couple of times that we could have seen some blowouts. There was the 12-5 blowout on Canada Day. But these last couple of games, decided by 2-3 runs, decided by 2 or 3 big hits. And, you mentioned, Nathan Lucas yesterday and a bunch of other guys who really stepped up. But, this was the series of George Springer.
Yeah.
And George Springer batted .517, 4 home runs, 11 RBI in this 11-game stretch. George Springer has been one of the best hitters in baseball over the course of the last month. And who saw this coming? Not I. I'd be shocked if anyone saw this coming. When he got off to his hot start at the beginning of the season, there were more people saying, hey, utilize this and maybe trade George Springer. Like, if there's any trade value that has popped up because of the hot start that he had, use that to trade him. And all of a sudden, we're halfway through the season, and he's got the highest OPS on the team. He's leading the team with 15 home runs. He's leading the team with 15 RBI, and he's been the heart and soul of this lineup. But nobody saw that coming.
I just love the story because, now that they're riding high, you can go back over it and maybe edit the movie. But, clearly you're talking about performances last night, Barger, and also, who am I forgetting? Springer. Okay, so those 2 guys, if you take those 2 guys, one of them wasn't supposed to be here and the other was probably the wish list would have been trade them out.
Right.
Like, don't start the season with them. These 2 guys are the catalyst, but as I said before, it's everybody. When you see a guy like Hoffman pitch 4 out of 5 games out of the pen, that's a real stretch job, and he was magnificent.
Yeah, and that's huge for this team because he's been a linchpin, and he has to be a linchpin for them to succeed in tight games if they're going to win the big ones that are going to matter way beyond July the 4th, right? That's what this team has to be looking at, right? This how long ago was it, Tab, man? We were on your Yes Guy show talking about should they be buyers? Should they be sellers?
That was a question, right?
At the trade deadline.
It's not a question anymore.
What is it? 27 days from the trade deadline, and it's a no-brainer that they have to be buyers. They have to be to a lot of people. They have to be aggressive buyers.
Yeah.
Because the American League is there for the taking. But you're right. Like when Springer gets off to the hot start, you think, well, is it sustainable? Because we've seen him in, considerable decline in his recent years.
But we're halfway through the season. Like I have no reason to believe that it's going to fall off at this point now. Like we're halfway through the season and he still has an OPS hovering just below 900. Yeah. Like if this was a 2-3 week stretch, okay. Like at the beginning of the year, I think you could question it. But the way that he's playing, and I think also keeping him out of right field as often as they've been able to do helps. Keeping him as a DH, just focus on hitting. I think that certainly helps a little bit. And I would hope that they continue to do that moving forward. Like I know Bo Bichette's getting back into the lineup today, so you're adding in that bat. So you got to move some things around. Vladdy's out, but he's going to be back in at some point. Yeah. And Addison Barger though, right? With the infield fully stocked, Barger that kicks him out to right field. If he can continue to do that, which he's got an absolute missile of an arm from out there, if he can continue to play right field decently enough and keep George Springer at DH, just focus on hitting, I have no reason to believe that this won't continue the rest of the way.
It's a marvelous, evolution of the story. Well, you signed Vladdy to you signed him to, it's Vladdy and a bunch of people. Now it's everybody participating. Yeah. And this is why you love sports. When your team has that moment, when everything gels and when everybody starts to participate in the victory as opposed to looking for who to blame for the loss. That's a nice little turnover.
Well, how much credit does Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins get? For the last 2 years, we've heard we're hoping for internal improvement, right? That's what they're hoping for offensively. Well, if you look at who is getting it done this year, it is guys who have come up and the internal improvement has come from them. Springer, right? His bounce back year. Alejandro Kirk, he's had a massive bounce back year. Ernie Clement, who's been kind of in the minors for the last few years. He had, he was back and forth the last 2 seasons, but he's come up and he's now hitting for the Blue Jays. He's been outstanding. Barger's come up and he's internally improved this roster, right? Like it wasn't Santander who improved this roster, right?
Yeah.
It is coming from guys from within, and it's up and down the lineup. It's quite incredible to see, and I think that those two deserve credit for being patient, having belief in the group, and trust in the process. We've heard these phrases before, and they were kind of empty calorie phrases, but it's kind of coming to fruition right now, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it feels like it is. Yeah. I mean, like let's hold the applause a little bit here. Like not at the park. If you're at the park, it's a fun place to be. Al's brother, you're going to head down there with your King Street crew, I'm sure. Many a day.
They do a couple games this year. I'm sure we'll do a couple more.
For sure. And it's a hot place to be, and I understand that. But look, I mean, the Santander piece, who makes a bit of news today because he's been put on the 60-day injured list now, more than a month since he last played. The idea that, it's great that you're doing this without Santander, who was your big offseason swing.
Yeah.
Guy who had 44 home runs a year ago and was brought into much fanfare. But it's hard to imagine that they're going to be able to sustain it if he can't get on the horse eventually and contribute something, isn't it? I mean, to me, it feels like they're going to need him to get healthy and be something of a threat down the stretch.
Considering he's making enough money, and I'll be curious. Like, put on the 60-day. He's been out for over a month, though. So, at some point through the summer, he will return midway. It's going to be after the trade deadline. But I would imagine that with this injury, with this news, they probably still feel like, okay, can you rely on Santander to come back and give you anything?
No.
So they'll probably have to go out and somewhat replace that bat, at least get some insurance, because I don't know if you can rely on him. I think it'd be great if Santander eventually gets back and gets swinging, but this is a guy who traditionally, starts off slow, and if he misses 2 months of the season, he's going to need a little bit of a lead up to get going. Can the Blue Jays afford that? They'll be in an AL East race. They're on top right now, first in the division. How long is that going to? They're going to be in lockstep with the Rays and the Yankees the whole way. They can't let Santander and his, what's he batting, 173 average. They can't let him wait and once he gets back, he's going to have to hit the ball running, or there's other guys who, if they can continue to do what they're doing, who should be in the lineup ahead of that guy.
So really what you're saying is the year is 2025. We were told that last year, and we were somewhat skeptical for the first 5 months of this year. Going on right now, the Yankees are tied with the Mets 2-2. and that is in the bottom of the third. The Rays, who are also one game behind the Jays with the Yankees, yes, Guy, are in Minnesota tonight, and the Angels are, of course, at Rogers Center to take on the Blue Jays. Aaron Boone, the manager of the Yankees, who had to be perplexed with the 4-game loss to the Blue Jays, talked about his players saying they're unfazed by this.
Well, for the most part, I'm looking for, unfazed. I don't want us to flinch. I want us to come here ready to prepare. I got that prepare, compete, win. We're preparing to go out there and compete our asses off, and I know if we do that well enough over time, we're going to win. It's hard. It's not fun. We work really hard every day and all season long to, it's about shaking hands at the end of the day. And when you're going through a tough stretch, it's not fun to do that. It's not fun walking back in here, but you got to be able to handle it. You better be able to handle it. And I know our guys do. And I know our leadership in that room will make sure we especially stay tight during these times, and we'll get through it because of the people we have in that room. And that's, there's been years where we haven't been equipped to go through this. That group is, and we will.
Okay, I don't know how you guys feel. It seemed like he was searching there. Am I right?
Searching in a big way. His team can't find itself right now. So yeah, it looks good on the Yankees a little bit. They don't. The one thing about this Yankees team, and it goes back to that disastrous inning where they essentially threw the World Series away. Yeah. With sloppy baseball, they play sloppy baseball still, right? It does come down to the details a lot of the time, and that's just a team that shoots itself in the foot again and again and again, despite having the most dominant hitter in the sport in Aaron Judge, despite having all the money in the world, although they don't spend it like they used to. They don't spend it like the Dodgers. They're not the evil empire anymore. They're very, very fallible. They look like there's a lot of chinks in the armor, and Aaron Boone looks like a manager that understands that.
Yeah, there was question marks about this Yankees team coming into the season. The offense was fine, but they lost. They lost Juan Soto, one of the best hitters in baseball, right? That's hard to replace internally. So you knew that the offense was going to take a bit of a dip. They signed Mark Fried, who's been a nice signing for them, but there were some injuries here. Louis Heel has been out all year. He's going to return at some point for this team, right? There's some help that's coming. They're getting some cavalry in the pitching department, which was supposed to kind of balance out the loss of offense. But the Yankees should not be worried. Yankees fans are losing their minds right now online because they just got swept by the Blue Jays and they lost, top spot in the AL East, but it's one game. It's one game, right? Blue Jays lose tonight, Yankees win today, all of a sudden they're back to a tie.
And you can't sleep on the Angels. The Angels come in, they're a 500 team. You're thinking about run differential. Theirs is horrendous. What are they? They're a minus. What are they? They're a minus 46.
Yeah.
But they're a 500 team, and they swept the Red Sox a while back. They just took 2 or 3 from the Braves. They took 3 or 4 from the Yankees a few series back. So they've done some damage against AL East teams. Yeah. So the idea
Jays have notoriously played pretty well against the Angels, though. Yeah. If I recall, in the last little bit, they've done very well. I think they're 8-2 in the last 10. So you hope just to keep the good times rolling, continue to pile up series victories. The last 10 series, since the date that everyone points out is that May 28th, and that was the day Bo Bichette walked in, 9th inning pinch hit, 2-run home run. They beat the Texas Rangers 2-0. Since then, the Jays have been the best team in baseball, and since then, I think they're 9-1 in series victories, and the one series they lose was somehow against the White Sox of all teams. They just got to keep stacking wins, keep stacking victories, win 2 out of 3, win 3 of 4, and they'll be in a good spot moving forward. Just got to keep the good vibes rolling, and this is a team that they've had success against, and hopefully they could build off of this massive series victory against the Yankees.
Just great to see some people that you wouldn't expect to contribute, and when it all comes together, it's fun to watch. It's interesting that you point out one of the Yankees' concerns would be an offensive star who bolted and went to another team, and how difficult that is to replace. Yeah. Does that narrative remind you of anything?
Yeah, slightly. It slightly does remind me of something. Is it someone who wore number 16 for the blue and white for a couple of years?
I'm afraid so, guys. The guilty guy.
Yeah. You know, it is obviously that's a big hole, right, for the Maple Leafs, and they've got to fill that Mitch Marner hole. Matthias Michelli's a nice piece. They added him, good buy low bet, but that's not going to replace 100 points that Mitch Marner left. That's not going to replace your top penalty killer, the guy who controls your power play. And they're not going to find one guy who's going to do that, but they do need to find another guy on top of Michelli to put in there to go alongside Matthews and Nyes. I don't know where they're going to find that guy. I don't know how they're going to get that guy. There's no one in free agency. With Nick Ehlers off the board, that was kind of the only other top 6 winger option available. I think on the TSN board, I like Victor Olofsson and Jack Roslovic are the 2 top forwards available in free agency at this point. So they're going to have to get it in the trade market. And even there, it's like, what do they have to trade to acquire a top 6 piece? It's going to be a fascinating summer. I'm curious to see what Brad Treliving has up his sleeve to make that replacement.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's got to be a trade that we're not thinking about.
For sure. I mean, but to Al's brother's point, you don't have a ton of pieces. I mean, unless you want to
bottom
do
6 pieces.
Unless you want to go through what you did last year in trading Minton, if you want to trade Cowan and cash in your 20-year-old for a more established piece. And
would you do that, Dave?
And really move the window up?
That?
It depends who the piece is, obviously.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If it's Nazem Kadri, who brings some ingredients that you've been looking for ever since he left the building, I might think about it.
Yeah.
If it's, to your point, if it's a playmaking winger that has potential to be a fit with Nyes and Matthews, then I might think about it. Because when you think about losing Marner, you lose his 100 points, but you also lose the guy who, since Mike Babcock got fired, has assisted on 50% of Austin Matthews' goals.
Yeah.
So you wonder, Matthews coming off a 33-goal career worst year, now he loses his number 1 team man. How's that going to affect him? And who's going to feed him? You have to put William Nylander up there to feed him and to work with him. Well, does that really kind of stretch your depth to the point where you're not the murderer's row of, a 3-line threat anymore? You're really a 2-line team, or who knows how many lines you got really that are scaring anybody. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, but you cannot deny when the CEO of MLSE says we need to be on the pathway to a cup. You have to ask yourself, can Easton Cowan help us get on the pathway to the cup in the very near future? Because we're not talking about the distant future anymore. We're talking about the near
it's a 2-year window. I mean, let's be honest here. There's nothing about what happens 5 years down the road in anything that'll happen over the next 3 or 4 months.
So
it's all about the next 2 years.
Let's hope that horse trainer made an impact on young Mr. Cowan. Okay, because he's gonna need some magic here.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was a very interesting report. There's gonna be a horse and a horse trainer at Leafs development camp. Not something I thought I'd read yesterday, but alas.
Well,
is that the team's way of saying saddle up?
I guess. Yeah.
Here's Haley Wickenheiser on the horse as the workout, I guess, example.
We've brought in a world-class horse trainer to spend a couple hours. Actually, we brought in a wild colt, a wild horse, to talk about how you manage emotions and how you go through handling pressure in tricky situations, actually using a horse. So it's going to be interesting. I can give you more tomorrow, but no, the horse will not be on the ice, and no one will be getting on the horse. So, but it was kind of an idea that Danielle Goyette and myself were talking one day about it, and then of course Shane Doan, being from the farm, thought it was great too.
So I guess if you're going to change the DNA of everybody, it's a mindset aside also from how you play, but it's how you think the game, isn't it?
Well, that's interesting you say that, Tap Man, because when we first heard Brad Treliving say that DNA phrase, which I think he kind of regrets saying that.
Seems like it.
Because we all keep bringing it up.
It's better than snot, isn't it?
Yeah, it probably is, although they both have their charms.
Yeah.
But, when he first said that, I think a lot of people thought, well, they need to change the DNA. That means changing the people. Right, that means, because DNA is kind of in you, right? Like,
right.
So there was this idea that, he's serious. Like, he's serious about changing something beyond just Marner leaving, as we all figured he would. He's kind of backtracked on that. He was on OverDrive on July 1st, and he sort of said, look, it's a little bit about personnel, but it's also about what's going on between the ears.
Right.
So you're talking about psychology as much as you're talking about personnel and statistics.
Yeah, didn't they try that a couple years ago? Like, who was they had brought in like a sports psychologist who he worked with Michael Phelps and like many gold medalists. Like, did that work for them?
Well, he was here and now he's not.
That's what I mean.
No
so
guy.
I guess they're going to try it again in different ways. Maybe this horse trainer can bring in some other elements that gentleman was unable to do. I don't know.
So the horse trainer work, I'd say, nay, guy.
Nay, guy. Is that good? Does that get the
Dave's a regular contributor to my broadcasting empire, so he can get away with it.
No guy.
There we go. No, I don't know. There's a lot of work that has to be done there. I tend to look at that story as not replacing Marner's point total because you can't.
Yeah.
But maybe if you reconfigure a few things and move some other pieces around, that replacing the 102 points doesn't become an issue. It's you get in and maybe you're better able to handle other situations. Although having said that, I think most people agree with what the Panthers did to get ahead of the curve on free agent frenzy day was. You could look at another 2 Stanley Cups there, I think, quite easily.
Well, let's face it. I mean, the Leafs would have happily taken a run at either Sam Bennett or Brad Marchand if either of them came to market.
Right.
And I would wager a hefty amount that they would have overpaid them, to get one of them. Because I think both those guys are sort of DNA incarnate, right? They're the walking example of what you're looking for in clutch game DNA. And so, when that plan
didn't get the chance.
When that plan died in the elbow room, where do you go from there? And the answer, Al's brother, as you and I well know, is there's not an easy path. There's not an easy blueprint here for where Brad should go from here beyond getting really creative, targeting players he believes have that DNA, and trying to trade for them.
I do wonder if there's an appetite within the organization, within the fan base. Like, would they be willing to maybe take a step back this year, right? Don't fill that spot.
Guy.
But you look at what's coming next offseason and the free agents that are there. Like, you may have a better opportunity to fill that void next year than this year.
I don't disagree with that, but you could never position it that way as we're waiting a year because the window is got 2 years on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an all or nothing premise. We'll get into that as we move along. Coming up next, the Argos, by the way, are at home to the Cats tonight, 7 o'clock, TSN 1050 and TSN 4. And to that end, from BMO Field, Matthew Shinetti will join us and you on OverDrive, TSN 1050, TSN 2.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Oh, yes, guy mailed it in Friday. Overdrive with Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brother Mike DiStefano. Big CFL action tonight at BMO. You can listen to it on TSN 1050 if you're in the car, or you can watch it on TSN 4. It'll be the Ticats against the Argos at BMO Field, and Montreal leads the division at 3-1. Hamilton next at 1-2. The Argos 1-3. Ottawa 1-3, and both the Cats and Argos coming off big wins. Their first win of the season for both last weekend. Matthew Shinetti is with us from BMO Field. Matthew, welcome. How are you today?
I'm well. Jim, how are you, my friend?
Everything's good. I mean, this is a huge game. I think when we talked earlier this season, we were talking about how competitive the East would be, and it is for almost a different reason, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think you can dictate anything that happens in the East this early because, I've always said that some of that training cramp rust is still being shaken off in July. But Ryan did what he told me yesterday. This is a must-win game for the Argos, and it's hard not to go ahead and think that way at 1-3. I mean, right now, with all the turnover they had after winning the Grey Cup last year, clearly they're still kind of working out the kinks in offense, defense, and special teams. It's obviously Derek Sluka, and he kind of feels like a throwback player playing the possibility of playing the number of positions he can, both on offense and defense. But 2 return touchdowns, 1 on a missed field goal, 1 on a pick six last week was enough to give the Argos a win in Ottawa, but they really haven't been all that consistent. And the same can be said for the Ticats at this point because, yeah, Bo Levi Mitchell has a ton of weapons. They can't get the run game going. He's having to throw a ton, but isn't really throwing the football that far when he's got Kenny Lawler and Tim White in his arsenal. So, yeah, it does kind of feel like a must-win. If for no other reason, boys, then these two teams have to start kind of finding their groove here because, yeah, sure, ultimately the Ticats beat the Alouettes, but the Alouettes are very good, and once they get Davis Alexander back, there really are a few weaknesses on that team. So you can't allow at least this early in the season, can't allow the Alouettes to get any kind of distance in the East because that has happened over the course of the last few seasons where the East can just be kind of muddled and just be a fight between 2 and 4.
Well, what about when the Argos get Chad Kelly back? I'm not sure what the latest is there or when he's expected to return, but does Nick Arbuckle just have to keep them afloat, or what is the expectation when Kelly does come back? Is this team good enough to compete for a championship with him at quarterback?
Yeah, Mike, I think that's the question everyone asks because when you take a look at what Chad Kelly brings, the amount of throws that he can actually make, he just changes everything the Argos can do on offense. He's slated to come back in early August, which really kind of tracks. That would be about 6 weeks. And the issue with Kelly consistently over the last number of weeks has been whether or not he can actually push off on his leg, if he can get out of the pocket, if he can break contain on a defensive line and be able to kind of move around and complete some of those off-platform throws that just make him, very different than any other quarterback in this league. But Nick Arbuckle is so elevated by his coaches and his teammates for the way that he looks at the game. But, this increased workload he has, unfortunately has tracked with other increased workloads he's had in the CFL, where there are times where Nick Arbuckle makes incredible throws, can read the defense so well, and certainly we saw that in the biggest game of the ball in the Grey Cup last year. Then there are times where he makes throws that just kind of make everybody shake their heads. So this is a guy who, at 9 years into his CFL career, has gone through almost every conceivable situation, from injuries to being a starter to being a trade piece to winning a Grey Cup. But he just has to get the Argos that few more weeks, just keep them afloat a few more weeks, because really when Chad Kelly comes back, it does open up a lot of things in Ryan Dinwiddie's offense.
Shinetti, since we got you on the line, let's talk a little soccer here. The Gold Cup final is Sunday. I think a lot of Canadian soccer fans hoped and maybe expected even that Canada would be in it. Of course they are not. It's U.S.-Mexico on Sunday. What are we to take from this? A few days after they were eliminated in the quarterfinal, less than a year until the domestic World Cup. Where is this team right now in your mind?
They have to match the expectations that the entire country has for them, Feschuk, because they did not do that. And they set the expectations themselves. This team said that the lowest expectation they had for themselves was getting to the final. And they couldn't hack that. And it is not an indictment of the talent on this team. It is not necessarily an indictment of Jesse Marsh. But if they're going to get a mulligan, this is it. Because they should have beaten Guatemala. Guatemala offered nothing. Jacob Schaffelberg is probably going to look back at that red card and shake his head for a long time about it. And ultimately, I think if Jesse Marsh were to go back and look at how much he wanted to chop and change his lineup because he didn't have stars like Alphonso Davies and Stefan Estacchio and Moise Babito, he might have, if he could go back, he probably would have said, okay, I've got these 11, 12, 13, 14 guys. They're different than the lineup I played during Copa America. Let's really give them a run out. I think the problems really emerged in that second group game against Curacao when they just, for a team that's as compact as and works as diligently as Canada does under Jesse Marsh, they just lost all their fire in the final 20 minutes, which was a kind of an absurd performance for a team that works as hard as Canada does. And then that El Salvador game was just the worst kind of advertisement for soccer in North America. So I think, and I've said this repeatedly, if this team, and they're still very confident, they have a lot of depth, and they have a ton of talent. I mean, we're also talking on the day that Jonathan David just signed with Juventus, which saying that sentence alone is insane.
Yeah, incredible.
When you think about what this team wants to do, this is a massive disappointment because they set their own expectations. However, if they continue to and they've got really competitive, tough friendlies coming up. They just announced Australia. They face Colombia, and then they're in Europe in September to face Romania and Wales. They're going to have intense international friendlies. Maybe not, there's no more tournament play before the World Cup, but I will say this. If they get out of the group, and then they could potentially have 4 games at BC, place 2 group games in the round of 32 and the round of 16. If we're all talking again ahead of the round of 16, which Canada is hosting at BC Place, no one will remember that they lost to Guatemala. However, if these warning signs persist, especially Jesse Marsh's emotions, getting back and forth with an international governing body, all the bench kind of reacting to every single slight against Canada, if that continues to be magnified and continues to hurt their performances, then what we saw against Guatemala in this Gold Cup will become a symptom of a larger problem.
I mean, Matthew, it sounds like the program's at sort of a fork in the road. They now play with expectations over the last year. We've heard from opposition matches or opposition sides that we're talking about what to exploit on Canada because everybody knew how good that we are at soccer and the respect was shown. But I mean, it's a little different than it was several years ago when just any kind of accomplishment would be celebrated. This comes with expectation. And so how do they punch through that?
I'm standing outside BMO Field. In about 340-odd days, there'll be 45,000 people here when Canada's men walk out to host a home World Cup, which is another insane sentence. This is what they have to deal with now. And I was speaking to Stefan Estacchio a little bit over the last day. It's obviously, one of his teammates in the Portuguese development system, Diogo Jota, died tragically in a car accident yesterday. But he said to me when I was kind of picking his brain a little bit about the team, he said, we're going to be fine. And a lot of that confidence comes from how close this group is. If you want to know how much they believe in what Jesse Marsh is selling to them, just look no further than Jonathan David. He played 56 games, including club and country assignments, and played 300 minutes in the Gold Cup and was ragged at the end. And yet he went out there every single time because of how much they believe in the vision that Jesse Marsh has. And Jesse Marsh has made it very clear. He romanticizes a run in the World Cup, much like South Korea had in 2002. It's one of the reasons why Marsh almost picked South Korea over Canada. They see a lot of possibility here. But now they have to look at these competitive friendlies. One, play their strongest lineup when they can, because that cohesion is going to be very important come a World Cup. But also, two, reflect on the psychological lessons they had, because you're absolutely right. Not only Guatemala, it was El Salvador, and before them in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinal, Mexico played a game in which they exploited all of Canada's perceived weaknesses. The world is no longer going to be surprised about the Canadian men's national team. Now it is up to Jesse Marsh and his group of leaders, which includes Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, Stefan Estacchio, Moise Babito, Alistair Johnston. They all have to look within themselves now and say, okay, because the lens is on us now. The microscope is fixed on this team. The honeymoon is over. The expectations are high. And if they don't meet them, given the talent on this team, it will be a massive waste.
Matthew, you brought up Jonathan David going to Juventus, and that sounds like it's happening. And you said it's a wild thing to say. Like, just kind of pick up on that as to just how big of a signing this is for Jonathan David to be signing with a premier club like Juve.
Yeah, Mike, 7 years ago, he was playing in Parks in Ottawa, playing for the Ottawa International. I mean, this story is incredible. A family a Haitian family who immigrated to the United States. Jonathan David was born in Brooklyn. They moved to Ottawa, and he embraces the game here. And let me tell you, as much as he is a soft-spoken man, there is intensity there. He loves playing the game. He loves playing for his country, clearly after what he did during the Gold Cup. But this has always been his goal. If you watch one of his goal celebrations, Jonathan David likes to cup his hand on his ear and kind of pantomime people talking around his ear. He wants pressure. Well, guess what? He's got it because in international sports, and especially in European club soccer, Juventus occupies the same kind of space as Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, Liverpool, teams that are hated by their rivals, loved by their fans, and never ignored. Juve hasn't won a Serie A title in 5 years. Jonathan David's now being paid as a starter to lead their attack to get them back to the pinnacle of Serie A soccer. I mean, that is, to me, yes, we can take a look at the disappointment of the Gold Cup, rightly so, and examine it, rightly so. But this is a massive day for the men's program. Now you look across the board, you look at all their major players on their team. They are playing high-level European soccer, playing in European competitions, either in the Champions League or the Europa League. This team is going to get the best kind of preparation. The only thing that presents a problem now are two things. Jonathan David is going to have a lot of pressure on him to score. That's his job, and he's being paid like it. And two, a lot of Canada's best players who were actually at the Gold Cup were exhausted. So now, how their club and how Jesse Marsh internationally manages their schedule is going to be very important so that they don't flame out come this time next year.
Well, from one Canadian star athlete to another, going to the other side of football in the Canadian Football League, Nathan Rourke expected to come back for the BC Lions tomorrow in that matchup against the Alouettes. What expectations do you have on him, and how much does BC and the CFL really need him to re-find his game from a few years ago when he was the league MOP?
I don't know if any. For those who don't watch him enough, I said a few minutes ago about how many throws Chad Kelly can make. Of all the time I've been very blessed to be on the sidelines covering the Canadian Football League over a decade and a bit, no one throws the football as beautifully as I've ever seen than Nathan Rourke. When he is mentally locked in, when he's mentally focused, and obviously we saw everything he did back in 2023, there are few better who throw the football the way he does. Certainly there's been injuries. Certainly there's been inconsistency. But if he can get back to that form that he had a few years ago, where not only he was challenging as the most outstanding Canadian, but clearly an MOP candidate, not only does it bring in, certainly eyes in the CFL game, and there's a lot of excitement around him because there's all those comparisons to, the long elevated Russ Jackson, the great Canadian quarterback who played for the Ottawa Rough Riders. But the one thing that Nathan Rourke does is he brings eyes from outside of the CFL to the game. And that really, if you ask new Commissioner Stuart Johnston, what is most important to him, it's going ahead and increasing that marketability of the CFL. And that's what Nathan Rourke does. But getting him healthy and consistent has been a bit of an issue since he's come back from the NFL. So he's back. It's not going to be an easy game against the Alouettes, but his currency in the league is always going to be high just because of the kind of impact he can have.
So, obviously, it's early in the season, but BC needs them. They're 1-3. How do you explain Calgary at 3-1?
Well, watching them last night, the Bombers are probably thinking the same thing, too. I look across the board, and the one thing I will say being here at BMO Field, Florian Arumalade, who was such a star for the Argos, that's the defensive end who was just so critical to the Argos defense, especially his pass rush. Him going over there, rejoining the Stampeders is huge. But you look at the kind of the motivational factor that is Vernon Adams Jr. He, within CFL circles, there are few quarterbacks, few players in the league that are as admired as that quarterback, just because of how hard he's worked. And I remember the practice as if it was yesterday. 10 years ago, he's lining up the fourth-string quarterback for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Now he was lining up as a receiver, willing to do anything to go ahead and get on the team. And yeah, before going into the game last night against the Bombers, he hadn't thrown a touchdown pass. And he kind of has these games where they call it good VA and bad VA, but it really does seem at this point, and I was there in that game when they played against the Argos, they absolutely there was a hum between he and Dave Dickinson, the head coach. I also want to pay a lot of attention to Dedrick Mills. Dedrick Mills is running riot, a lot of hard yards for the Stampeders, and every great Stampeder team, we're going back obviously with Bo Levi Mitchell was their starting quarterback, always had a hard running back. You think of the way John Cornish ran Jerome Messam ran for them. And to be able to have a complementary offense is very, very key to the Stampeders. And clearly, in those first three quarters, the Bombers, who were coming in on a high themselves, they learned it.
So, Shinetti, Argos obviously have the Ticats, and then they're going to get a taste of the Alouettes after a bye week. How much better are the Alouettes than everybody else in the East? Obviously 3-1 by record, but by your, eye test, how superior is that team?
This is something that Jason Moss has built, Feschuk. I mean, if you look intensity in the CFL dictionary, you'll get Jason Moss's face. He really has built this competitive atmosphere within his organization, and they are not pleased about what happened in the East Final last year. They've made that very clear. As much as in the other side of their mouth, almost immediately they'll say, well, we got over pretty quickly. They wanted to go back-to-back as Grey Cup champions, having won in 2023. But they had, a substantial amount of injuries last year. And certainly the quarterback situation between Cody Fajardo and Davis Alexander, not a distraction, but I think it didn't leave them as settled as they wanted to be. Obviously, Davis Alexander didn't play last week against the Hamilton Tiger Cats, but he brings a competitive edge that just complements everything Jason Moss wants to do. And as much as he's built a family atmosphere, you talk to guys within that organization. Darnell Sankey, the starting linebacker, has said that there is absolutely an intensity, a competitiveness, that these guys go at each other, whether it's ping pong, whether it's pickleball, whether it's other games. They call them the bird cage games within the Alouettes locker room. That's what Jason Moss has fostered. And if they get humming, they could build a lot of distance between themselves and the rest of the East. And that's why when you look at this game tonight between the Argos and the Ticats, anyone who can show that they might possibly give the Alouettes difficulty, they have to show it now. Because if we're still discussing whether or not the Argos, the Ticats, the Red Blacks are going to be able to catch the Owls come Labor Day, I don't think that'll be the case, because Jason Moss has set the gauntlet down already. He had this expression, be great for 8, when they won the Grey Cup in 2023. He is making his guys obsessed with looking at 9s everywhere throughout the season in their preparation, because they want that 9th Grey Cup title. And when Moss has made his locker room focus and obsessive, they've come away as Grey Cup champions, and he seems to be building that again this year.
Matthew, thanks for your time. Enjoy the game tonight.
Have a great weekend, boys.
All right, you too. Thank you. So, Ticats and Argos, BMO, 7 o'clock, TSN 1050, TSN 4. In a year from now, World Cup.
It's like Shinetti says, it's just hard to believe, right? Yeah. You think about how far away it once was to even fathom playing a domestic World Cup, and let alone playing a domestic World Cup with players on your team that are international stars. Big-time leagues around the world, from Davies to Jonathan David now.
And playing
Syria.
it on Canadian soil at that.
Yeah.
It's
incredible.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think a lot of people are excited. I'm not excited about the traffic that it's going to bring to this city.
No, nobody's excited about that.
Boy, that is going to be interesting.
Traffic problems in Toronto.
Nobody's excited about the traffic. Nobody's excited about who's going to pay for it all.
No.
Which of course, will be us.
Yeah.
The tax.
Not enough money, too many cars. Have we heard that one before?
Yeah.
Once or twice. But it is incredible that the Canadian Soccer Foundation, the program has built itself up, and they've invested a lot of money into it and time, and it obviously Alphonso Davies was one star, and then it's kind of built from there. And even like last summer, I think that run that they made, that the Copa Americas, that really kind of galvanized the country, I felt, and everyone was kind of tuned in and watched them. And some of those names like Alistair Johnston and Jacob Scheffelberg, those guys became somewhat household names and became guys to root for going forward as we head into 2026. So I'm excited for it. I really am.
Although you wonder if they should have been sitting in on the horse training seminar today. If they're talking about
this could catch on.
If they're talking about controlling their emotions, as Haley Wickenheiser has said, the Leafs were going to be working on, like Scheffelberg getting the double yellow that turned into the red that brought them down to 10 men against Guatemala, and is one of the reasons they're not playing in the Gold Cup final on Sunday. Jesse March seems to be very, very, I would say rabbit-eared when it comes to officials and with international soccer federations. And, I love the fire, but you got to control it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was talking about horses, I would just simply say be Secretariat.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
That's my kind of horse.
Show the video of the Belmont in whatever year that was, in the early 70s. That's what you want to do.
They say he had a big heart, like double the size of the average horse.
And he had a pretty good stride,
You
too.
could use a horse like that.
Who couldn't? Anyway, we'll step out, come back with more OverDrive on TSN 1050 and TSN 2.
Now, back to OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Oh, yes, guy. OverDrive. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brothers subbing for the regular three who have split. I got stuck in a traffic jam with the hockey insiders today. They were scattering all over the cottage country. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. And Mail It In Friday is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP when you get an entree, side, and a drink, and you'll get it in 20 minutes or less. A fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for a $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza. Speaking of eats, Sal's brother, It's the hot dog. The Nathan's.
Why'd you look at me? Why'd you look at Feschuk?
Because you were the guy who said to do it.
I wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, you were the guy who said you wanted to talk about it. That's the only reason.
I am a big fan of Joey Jaws Chestnut. I mean, you talk about guys who are just men amongst men, and this fellow right here, we're watching up on TSN2, this guy can eat like no one else on this planet. At the Nathan's hot dog eating competition today, he downed 70 and a half hot dogs in 10 minutes to win his 17th mustard championship. It's remarkable. Remarkable stuff.
Could you see him at an Italian wedding?
Oh my goodness, this guy could.
Course number 4.
He eats everything though. Like I think he holds the world record for like chicken wings, cotton candy.
Oh yeah.
He's just a professional eater. And I mean, it's outstanding what this guy can shove down his gullet.
He puts himself through some crazy training too. Did you read about that? I was looking through some of the
training.
profiles. I'm serious. He does like.
I mean, you shove that much. You have to expand your stomach.
That's another story.
He does stuff to expand the stomach. He does stuff to. He takes some sort of asthma medication so he can breathe through his nose.
Yeah, you got to control.
And then
breathing.
the one that kills me is he puts like a mouth guard that's attached to some leather strap with like a 16-pound weight to like clench his jaw and improve the strength of his jaw.
Unreal.
All that chewing.
For what? What? He barely chews those things. I swear.
Chew a little bit.
Like the tiniest bit. The dunkage of the bun though is one of the most disgusting things of all time.
And it's hot water too. It's like almost
it's
boiling.
hot water.
Oh, no,
He uses hot water.
Disintegrate the bread.
116-degree Fahrenheit water.
But I mean, he's not really eating it, is he? He's chewing it.
I don't know, man. It's going down.
Is it?
It's kind of going down. But I mean, he's like basically
It's like a slug going down.
He's eating
your
at like
throat.
double the pace of almost everybody else that's in the contest.
Well, that's what's so amazing. I mean, I don't even know what the second place. The thing is, no one even knows who else is in the competition.
Right. It's a one-man show.
You only know about Joey Chestnut, and same with Mickey Sudo. Like she's the eating goat, the hot dog eating goat of female women's hot dog eating. She won in the women's division today. Like those two are the best eaters on planet Earth, and it's astounding stuff.
Sure. I mean, how much of it actually penetrates the digestive system?
None of it. It all comes out 5 minutes later, guaranteed.
That is for
Guaranteed.
Sure. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Cleanup at the Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Yeah.
The cleanup
You want
crew
that
comes
job?
in. No thanks, guy. That is wicked.
Yeah.
I don't know what would inspire anybody to do that, but nonetheless, he's our hero today.
The hero America loves.
Yeah.
Nothing more American than that Coney Island hot dog eating competition on July 4th.
So, Yes Guy LLP has signed off on Yes Guy, No Guy at 5:30. Are we still on for that, Doogie? We are? Okay. So that's going to happen. Mark Masters at 5:05. The Leafs development camp was held this week after the draft, after the free agent frenzy. The draft seems like it was a year and a half ago, doesn't it?
It was a year and a half long. I could tell you that.
That's a good point. That's a good point. There was a lot of complaints about the decentralized draft.
Yeah.
How it was lengthened.
Never
for
again,
some unknown
please.
reason.
Okay. OverDrive continues on TSN2, TSN 1050.
It's Mail It In Friday.
The plant called and said if you don't come in tomorrow, don't bother coming in Monday.
Woohoo! 4-day weekend.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Nice bouncy intro music. Welcome to Mail It In Friday and OverDrive. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, Al's brother with you. Truly defining what Mail It In Friday is on OverDrive, right? We can do that. This is the best version of Mail It In Friday.
It's junk mail.
Yeah.
Junk mail.
It's a flyer.
The junk mail that clogs your mailbox and you throw out immediately
It's a
after
discount
getting
ticket,
it.
yes. So we were talking in the break about how the draft was last Friday. Seems like a year and a half ago. Free agent frenzy day seems like probably 6 months ago.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff didn't happen there. I'm kind of interested. You know, a lot of people have said, well, you know, not a lot of sizzle there. Some moves, a lot of re-signing. But that's really kind of, for me, the evolution of the money and the cap going up is that people can actually pick their spot. Does that make any sense? As opposed to going into an auction.
Well, I guess people can pick their spots, and their teams can pay what they want, I guess, right? How many guys did we see outside of Marner leaving to go to the Strip? You know, we saw a lot of guys just decide to stay where they are.
Yeah.
Stay with the devil they know rather than test the waters of free agency, because one assumes with the cap rising, they got deals that they were happy with. And they thought, look, I'll take the deal I'm happy with here rather than, you know, go through that whole rigmarole of the free agent frenzy and take my chances with who might be on the market.
It was real interesting, though, because when you look at it, like we see Ehlers go off the board yesterday, 8.5, 6-year deal, and that was the most amount of money handed out on free agency, which worked out to $51 million, I think, is the number in that range.
Yep.
And I think a lot of us were expecting to see a lot more money than that handed out to some of these contracts. And granted, some of them, you know, did sign for higher number. Like Marner ends up getting 12 by 8, and so that number is higher there. But overall, I kind of applaud the GMs. Although they had way more money at their disposal, they didn't waste it. And that is something that I expected to see. I thought we would see a bunch of guys kind of push the chips all in. It's like, wow, we actually have money for the first time in years, like, and just start throwing stupid cash at people. But didn't really happen. I thought there was a lot of like digestible deals. Even like the guys who went off the board a little late, like that Pia Suter deal. I thought that was a fair deal for him. He gets what, 4.125, 2 years in St. Louis. Like there was talk that guy was going to command, especially once Tavares re-signed and there was no other centers on the board. It's like that guy might, you know, get $5.5 million. Only got, you know, St. Louis was able to get him for a little over $4 million. There was a lot of deals like that that I thought that were very, very fair on both sides.
I agree. A lot of serviceable contracts that don't have ridiculous term, but that sort of goes against what a free agent frenzy is.
And then there was Tanner Jeannot's deal. That one just, I still can't quite understand why Boston is paying Tanner Jeannot that much money.
Well, and our good pal Carlo got heated with another guy whose initials are CC,
Cody Ceci,
getting $4.5 million over 4.
Well,
yeah.
Because I think Carlo sort of sees himself like, if I would have hung around a little longer, I could do what Cody Ceci
Walked away
does,
from the
and
table.
I could do it better. But hey, Ken Holland sees something there that maybe nobody else sees. Mr. Ceci
had him for a couple of years in Edmonton, so he knows CC's game at the very least. So there clearly is something that he likes about him. Big enough body, I suppose. But Toronto didn't do a whole lot here. That's for sure. Did not do a whole lot here. And there's a lot of people happy to see him move on. And obviously, Kenny Holland wanted to bring him back onto his squad. And, well, we'll see what happens in L.A.
We will see is one of my favorite lines. Joining us in the Maple Toyota hotline is Mark Masters. And Mark is reporting to us, obviously, the development camp this week. All kinds of stuff, Leaf-wise, and of course, some horse talk, Mark. What's with the horse?
That's been the discussion down here today pretty much all day. The Leafs bringing in a world-class horse trainer named Jeff Davis from south of the border into development camp to give a 2.5 hour presentation to the Leafs prospects today. And, you know, Haley Wickenheiser, yesterday, she told us about it, and she admitted she wasn't sure how it was going to go. It's a little something different. They wanted to try and spice things up this week. She thought it was going to help the players learn how to kind of manage their emotions, deal with pressure a little bit. And just talking to the players today, they seem to enjoy it. Like it was something different. It did kind of break up the usual stuff, the usual fare. For a lot of these guys, this isn't their first development camp, so obviously they've heard some normal guest speakers, which they do get a lot out of. Guys like Wendell Clark, Craig Berube talked to them, Brad Treliving. They heard from the team's mental health performance consultant to talk about pressure. But this was, something a little different. And we were talking to, Luke Hames, and he was saying, like, this is something where you kind of learn how you build trust, you build relationships. The guy had to teach this untrained colt, this untrained horse, kind of how to follow his movements. And he said that you can kind of relate it a little bit to how you build relationships with your teammates and how you have to build the trust there. So it's interesting. Victor Johansson, the team's 4th-round pick last year out of the Swedish Junior League, was just saying he learned that you got to keep your eyes on the coach, that the horse trainer was always kind of keeping eye contact with the horse. So that was his takeaway. And it felt like all the guys had a little bit of a different takeaway. Noah Chadwick talking about the leadership and how you have to, again, similar kind of idea that you have to kind of build trust with the horse trainer with the horse, and you have to build trust with your teammates. So definitely different story here today than I'm used to seeing at the Leafs development camp.
And what does it say to you, Masters, that this is sort of this focus on mental toughness and mental wellness and dealing with pressure and understanding how to control your emotions? What does it say to you that the Leafs have made this a focus of their development camp?
I think it says that it's an issue. It's that they're not as scared of it, that they're confronting it, and they, there's no secret what's been going on for the big club during this run, how they get to these big moments, and it hasn't worked out. So I think it says that they're meeting that kind of head on. The prospects kind of enjoyed that as well, and might as well start them young, right? Like start it right at the start of your career. Like I know they've talked a bit about social media and the expectations and how things are different in Toronto as well. And I think that's important. That's what you've kind of got to learn right away if you're going to be a professional hockey player, especially if you're going to do it in a market like Toronto.
Anyone standing out so far out there for the on-ice sessions, Mark?
No, I wouldn't say that. It's tough to say. They've had 2 on-ice sessions. They're going to have 1 more tomorrow. That's down from 5 last year. And Wickenheiser was explaining that they did more on-ice sessions coming out of COVID. They really wanted to check in on the guys, see what they've been up to. And now they just, it's early in the summer. They don't want to push guys too hard. They don't want injuries to pop up. Clearly, there still has to be an on-ice element to this camp. I mean, hockey players have to play hockey, but I don't want to read too much into it. Clearly, there was the fight yesterday, so that certainly stood out because I haven't seen that in a while at a development camp. So that raised eyebrows, but no one I wouldn't say is popping from just a hockey perspective. Although we'll see what Wickenheiser says tomorrow when she gives her full debrief on the camp. If someone has stood out to her, certainly you see Tinas, Luke Koblar, their top pick in the last draft. He looks pretty big. He comes as advertised, a big presence on the ice. Seems to move all right. So you're just kind of getting your eyes on some of the guys that you haven't seen. We just talked to Will Bell, 5th-round pick in the most recent draft out of the U.S. National Team Development Program. Boy, is he's sturdy. He's thick. He's physically imposing. So you're just kind of getting your eyes on some of these guys for the first time, and those are your bigger takeaways than maybe anybody kind of what they're doing in the drills or on the ice, for me at least.
So, Mark, I want to go back to the horse thing, just because it's it's an easy narrative. And when we're talking about changing the DNA, which might be a regrettable statement now, but I mean, this goes through the whole organization, and I respect that. But anybody who really is concerned about this storyline only cares about at the top level. So how does that, like, how do you do that? Is there any sort of thing that's happened over the last week and a half that changes your mind on any of that?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think that DNA changes maybe isn't as, I think when you heard Brad Treliving talk about it immediately after the season, when he did his debrief, you kind of think of it as a big thing. And I think of it more of as a subtle thing. And like the negotiations with Matthew Nyes and John Tavares and how they played out is maybe part of it, changing the DNA a little bit. 2 guys where it was, they didn't reach free agency. They signed. John Tavares said he left money on the table, and certainly for Matthew Knies, he could have looked into becoming a restricted free agent and what that might have, led to. And even Brad Treliving, being patient here, not, making any rash decisions in free agency, even though there might be an inclination to run out and do something immediately after Mitch Marner leaves. So I think that the DNA thing is more subtle. Obviously, there's nothing subtle about a horse. I know the guys were talking about how it was going wild when the guy tried to put a saddle on the horse today. It was bucking like crazy, and that caught a lot of the guys off guard. But I think everything just adds up. So, whether it's what's happening in development camp here, what's happening at the negotiating table, what's going to be happening at training camp, everything will add up to a DNA change for the Leafs.
Well, obviously the biggest, loss for this team over the offseason is Mitch Marner, and that's big. It's 102 points out the door, and also the right-hand man for Austin Matthews. And we were kind of pondering this earlier, Mark, like with Marner out the door, and what was the stat? 50% of Matthews' goals the last few years have come from Mitch Marner. Like, with him going out the door, like, will expectations be adjusted, or should they be adjusted for Austin Matthews moving forward?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously the injury was a big factor in the most recent season, but he had a lot of success early in his career. When he wasn't playing with Mitch Marner in the Mike Babcock era, obviously he had his most success with Marner, but I look at, how hot he was down the stretch a couple years ago when he was playing with Bertuzzi and Domi, and that line was just on fire. The guy is so good. I mean, he's one of the best players in the world. He's a Hart Trophy winner. Matthew Knies is an emerging power forward talent. I think that, Austin Matthews, assuming he's healthy, is going to score a lot of goals next season. He is going to be a very, very, very effective, good player for the team. My expectations for him don't change. If anything, I expect him to maybe, raise it, be emboldened by it, like take even more ownership on that line without Mitch Marner there. So I don't change my expectations for Austin Matthews at all.
So we've been talking, Mark. I mean, Treliving has said that he wants to add another top six forward before the offseason's over. And Al's brother and Tatman and I were going over the potential trade pieces that you could actually offer a team that had the top six forward that you coveted if you're Treliving. How do you feel about the idea of them including Easton Cowan at age 20 into a package if it was the player that they desired?
You're probably going to have to, just with, how depleted their prospect pool is. I guess Ben Danford, their first-round pick from last year, is another player that might be attractive. But it feels like, listen, to get something good, you're going to have to give up something good. And again, they don't have a ton. We saw Fraser Minton, Nikita Grabenkin go out the door during the trade deadline period. So, I mean, that's just the way it's going to have to be. I mean, obviously, you could trade off of your roster as well. Nick Robertson's a restricted free agent. So many times we've thought he might be done, but he doesn't seem to have a ton of currency on the open market in terms of what other teams are interested in. We know he requested a trade last season, and that didn't happen. The team has liked his skill set and wanted to keep him. So, I mean, I would feel like, depending on what the return is, that's something that you might have to do to get what you need and what you want.
I sort of spin around in a circle on this because I do the editing of the movie. So if I plug Mitch Marner back in, they still wouldn't be good enough because they weren't good enough this year. If you take them out, then you have to replace them and still get better at the same time. I don't know what the answer to that is. Do you?
Well, they're going to be different. That's for sure. Without Mitch Marner, Mitch Marner was an incredible player and is an incredible player and was a big reason why they had a lot of success in the regular season. I still think the team is set up to have success in the regular season. Perhaps not as much success, but certainly more than enough to be a playoff team. And then you get to the postseason, and now you got to find a different mix and the different DNA that we've talked about. And at least. We've said it time and time again during this era that it just didn't add up, right? The core for this core group, it was just not set up. They got to the key moments and they didn't believe it. It felt like that they could do it. That's just how it looked when you see the efforts in games 5 and 7, or the performance, I should say, in those games. So now with Marner gone, will that be enough to lead to a different feel? I don't know. clearly Brad Treliving has talked about bringing in someone new. He's not done yet. I don't want to make any sort of conclusions on their offseason just yet because he's, said he wants to continue to add, and specifically a top six forward. So we'll wait and see. But, yeah, it's tricky. Like, it's not easy. A lot of teams are trying to figure out the right mix. They're just at different levels, right? Carolina's, was Nikolai Ehlers the guy to get them over the hump from their hump is the Eastern Conference Final. Leafs hump seems to be first, second round. So a lot of teams trying to figure this out.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that Carolina team. They've been to 2 of the last 3 Eastern Conference Finals. Masters, you've watched them closely. We all have. And yet they haven't been able to get over that hump with the Panthers. Nobody has. Do you when you look at the way they added K'Andre Miller, they added Ehlers, like, do you think it gets them closer? Do you like what they've done, or how do you look at the way they're approaching trying to become the preeminent Eastern Conference team?
Yeah, they're trying to change their mix as well, right? And so they've always seemed to have lacked that extra scoring punch at the end. The problem I think every team is dealing with in the East is just, how do you beat Florida? Do I think they're set up to beat Florida now? If Florida's healthy, no. I just, it's going to be very hard. I don't know what any team can do right now to try and beat Florida the way they've been going. You just got to hope it catches up to them, I suppose. But they're trying, right? They're changing the mix. I like Miller. I like they've changed the mix now up front and on defense in a significant way. And they're still going to be a good team because they've built that foundation. So I like what they've done. Will it be enough? I'm, skeptical at this moment, but that has more to do with the Florida Panthers than the Carolina Hurricanes.
Going back to the Leafs quickly, Mark, there's obviously been a lot of fanfare with the Marner situation, Nyes Tavares re-signing. It's been quite quiet through free agency, not a whole lot to report there. But kind of under the radar, a guy who the Maple Leafs could extend this summer is Anthony Stolarz, who's coming off an amazing season and kind of fought that number 1 role from Joseph Woll. Would you say that he should be a priority to try and get signed to an extension this summer? And what might that look like, considering that he's had, just kind of an up and down career, but one really solid season last year with Toronto?
Yeah, I don't know if it's, maybe you want to see a bit more, right? Like, Brad Treliving hasn't been asked about it, but he had an incredible year last year. He's dealt with injuries, of course, in the past, including last season. So maybe you want to see it continue. Can he be right at the top of the league? I mean, he had the best save percentage in the NHL amongst the goalies that qualified last season. Can he continue that? It's interesting. I talked to Lane Lambert when he got hired as the Seattle Kraken head coach, and I was, obviously the assistant coaches really don't do interviews in Toronto, so I was just curious to pick his brain. And I asked him about the playoff series, and one of the turning points that he listed in the series wasn't just Game 5 and obviously the performance in Game 7, but Anthony Stolarz getting hurt. They really did feel like that changed things, and that it hurt them, right? There was a drop-off there from Stolarz to Woll. So they held him in high estimation, the coaching staff. But I can understand why they'd want to see more before you make a bigger commitment. Goaltending can be so random at times. So I don't know what that contract would would look like. It's such an interesting path to this point for him. But let's see if he start. It's not going to be. It's a good time for Anthony Stolarz to be playing at this level, and kind of he would command a lot. When you look at the goalie market that we just saw, not a lot of guys that you can bank on are available. So I don't know what that contract will look like. I don't know how eager they are to extend him because Treliving hasn't been asked about it. I haven't heard much about it. But it's going to be fascinating just to see the way he starts the next season, and can he stay healthy and just build on what he did last year.
Masters, I know you always are keeping one eye on the tennis over at the All England Club. Now that there's no Canadians in the fight, who are you liking here? Do you like Djokovic's chances of winning one last slam here in the face of the young guns that are there to take his crown?
Yeah, I do. I mean, listen, you wouldn't bank on it. Like, he's not obviously the favorite. The problem for him, he's running into the problem that all of the up-and-coming challengers had during the Big Three era, which is in order to win a trophy, you had to beat 2 of them, and that's what he's going to have to do. Is he'd have to beat both Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz to win it. But he's looking great. Like, he looks, straight sets against Dan Evans in his last match. I feel like if he's going to get another one, it's going to be at Wimbledon, and it's probably going to have to be this year. It just feels like you're fighting Father Time every year that advances. So I like his chances of getting to that semi, and then we'll see how Alcaraz and and Sinner are looking. Alcaraz dropping a set today. Sinner's kind of been mowing them down. So we'll see. But, yeah, let's just say I like the way he's looking, and he's obviously got a great track record at Wimbledon. It's just hard, though. Alcaraz and Sinner just seem to be on another level right now.
Mark, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend.
I will. Thanks, guys.
Mark Masters joined us on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Drive the built-in Canada, fuel-efficient, fun-to-drive Toyota RAV4. Gas or hybrid models available. Visit mapletoyota.com.
Djokovic, 38 years old, playing against these, what is it? Alcaraz is 22, Sinner's 23.
Yeah.
Bit of a gap.
Plus 500 right now. Third best odds on FanDuel to win Wimbledon. Alcaraz and Sinner both heavily favored, actually. They're close. Plus 120 for Alcaraz, Sinner second, plus 145. And then there's that drop-off. So the books are expecting for these two youngins to go, battle it out once again in a slam. But you can't count out Joker. At this age, he still can play. He can still play. So plus 500 is not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah. You thinking about a sprinkle?
I might sprinkle. Might do a little sprinkle, a little bay salt sprinkle on the Joker
pinch.
There.
Just a pinch.
Just a pinch. That's right.
I want to circle back to the Leafs. I've got their forward grid in front of me. I've got 15 forwards.
Yeah.
The way it stands right now, everybody's penciled in Michelli on the top line. I can't get there. McMahon on the second line. I can't get there either. I mean, it could happen. And then you've got Waugh centering Robertson and Domi, and Lawton centering Yarncroke and Lorentz and the extras. We don't know where Pizzetta fits in, but I would have him on the fourth line. Got Cowan and Camp. I mean, there's a glut of bottom six forwards there. I'm not suggesting that that's how they're going to start. Somebody's going to go here.
Yeah.
But does the collection of people go, does that bring back a top six winger? And who is it?
Not unless Cowan is probably one of those guys. Or there's been some speculation that maybe Brandon Carlo could be a piece that they use to try. Maybe one of the goaltenders. Like maybe they decide, all right, do we want to go forward with Wall? Do we want to go forward with Stolars and move the other guy? Because there's a lot of teams out there that are looking for goalies.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's think that one through, though. Okay? What's happened since those two guys got together? Every time one of them's playing well, or they're both playing well, what also happens? One of them gets hurt.
Yeah.
That tells you need them both.
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot
I agree with
without
it's taken years to get there.
Yeah, I would not go down that route, but it is an option that they could consider if the correct piece came about and they needed to move off of one of those goals. I wouldn't do that. I don't think I'd think about it, but they don't have a lot of options. That's the problem.
No, they don't. But you're talking about trading the goaltender and a defenseman, and quite frankly, it took 9 years to get there with the defense and the goaltending.
So that leaves Cowan. So it's like if you do want to make an addition to this team's top six, there really is only one player that can certainly, be appetizing to other teams that doesn't necessarily have a role on this team this year. He's going to have to compete and put forward a solid effort in camp. I know the junior numbers were sparkling coming off an OHL championship, but the NHL is a different beast. And last year, Craig Berube wasn't ready to see him in an NHL uniform, and he's going to have to prove it again in this upcoming training camp that he's ready to do it. But if they continue and they add another top six piece, that makes it even less likely for him to make the team. So if you have this 1-2 year window, you kind of have to consider it. You have to consider trading Easton Cowan for a win now top six piece.
I mean, you've got to be saying to yourself, is he his own version of Matthew Nyes? Not exactly the same player, but could he do in 2 years what Matthew Nyes did? I got to believe the answer is probably a no.
Well, it would be the ideal scenario for the Leafs.
It would be wonderful. Then you get back to the Blue Jays story. Where was Barger when all this was supposed to happen in spring training?
Yeah.
Not on anybody's list, but look what he's done.
Right. Well, you just hear the story. Look, you just see the CHL production. You see the winning, which is nice that he's been on winning teams, and he's been a big-time player on winning teams at the junior level. But then you hear this, it's about puck management. And if you're playing for Craig Berube and you've got puck management issues
that's
at
his
age
number
20,
one bugaboo.
Well, it's going to be a problem, right? You're not going to get on the ice, let alone be a top six player under Craig Berube or any coach worth his salt. So those mistakes just aren't tolerated at this level. They can't be tolerated in the playoffs for a team that wants to get over the playoff hump, multiple playoff humps, ideally. So it's just hard to imagine him doing it, but it would be the easiest path to fill in the hole you need, right? Is if this guy just wows you and completely overachieves, and problem solved.
Yeah, if I had to put a Jerry's on that happening, like Cowan winning a top 6 spot this year at camp this year, like it'd be what, 20%, 25% chance?
Feels low. I think you're right.
At that.
That would probably be my neighborhood.
So if you could trade him for, like, just to throw out a couple, like Brian Rust is a name that I like a lot. I was thinking about it yesterday. Like if you could pluck a Brian Rust, if Dubas is willing to trade with the Maple Leafs.
Well, he'd love to have Cowan.
Well, I mean, who drafted Easton Cowan?
Yeah.
Who drafted him?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like the what's his name now? He's down in Pittsburgh. He was the
Dubas' right-hand guy.
Wes Clark. Wes Clark. Thank you. Wes Clark.
Thank you.
Wes Clark is the guy who drafted him, right? Yeah. So he's now in Pittsburgh. Maybe that they would decide to bring him in. And I mean, Russ is a 30-goal scorer, right? Like that replaces a lot of the offense that Marner left, and he's got term on his deal. So it's not just for 1 year; it's 3 years, which is the exact same amount of term that I think Matthews has left on his contract. So that kind of lines up. If you can make a deal like that, Rickard Rakell's another player in Pittsburgh, 70 points last year, 35 goals, 35 assists. So there are some guys where it makes sense, but it has to really make sense to move off of a top prospect like that.
I like that because then it forces a lot of people down. You still got too many bottom 6 forwards, but you can move them.
Yeah, I mean, to make the money work, maybe you can find a taker for David. There's still some teams that need to get to the floor. There's a couple teams there that aren't even at the cap floor yet. Yeah. So here, take on Camps 2.4 and get yourself there. Get yourself closer. Maybe give them a draft.
What do you get back for that?
You're not getting anything back. You're getting nothing back.
You get them off your books.
You
get them off the books.
Yeah, that's what you want at that point. Just move the salary out.
Yeah,
and we'll get some wiggle room here.
Pretty much.
You want Ryan Reeves maybe? It's 1.35.
You can bury that contract.
You can bury it, but you could also get rid of it.
Well, what's Campo? He's at 2.4, isn't he?
Yeah.
So you'd have 2 more years.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think you want to move that.
That Yarncroc is another player that
final year
potentially, but Camp would be the one that I think you circle. Probably the one that they'd like to move the most, I would think.
I mean, those 2 wingers you're talking about, you play them with Matthews and Nyes. It's a different look on that line.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different.
Absolutely.
I don't like it.
I think Kyle Dubas wants to do business.
Well, that's the question. Well, does now Kadri's been brought up? Calgary has not been willing to do fair deals, fair business with Brad Treliving either.
Yeah.
So it's like the main options that are being thrown around. There's a little wrinkle in that with those 2 teams, and the general managers there don't seem to want to do business with Brad Treliving. So but who knows?
But I think you nailed it. If somehow you could figure out a way to get Kadri and Rust.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know how you would do it.
They don't have that. I don't think they have nearly enough.
But in terms of a lineup, that's what you need.
Yeah.
That's the kind of move you need.
Yeah,
right?
both those guys.
In that moment.
You need a shoehorn to fit them in. But
two top 6 guys away. Is that what you're saying, Taddy? They don't need one.
Well, they are. They
need 2.
But they are because they've lost the top right winger, and they never really had the left winger on the second line.
That's true.
It was an open cast.
Top 6, Pontus.
It was a casting call there.
Bobby McMahon's the placeholder there.
And he could be, but he hasn't shown it.
But he's fallen out of favor at times, and
maybe he gets traded.
Able to
possibly, yeah, he could be someone who they decide to move out.
I mean, if you're talking about running for a Stanley Cup, both those holes have to. They're not negotiable. They're not. Let's see if this can work.
Yeah,
this is who we have, and it's going to work.
Yeah, it's just tough.
Top 6. Come on,
not a lot there to. They don't have enough to acquire those holes, and there's nothing in free agency. So it's going to be very difficult, extremely difficult to fill both of those holes. One could be doable if you're willing to put the right pieces in play.
Then still 1 brick short of a load again.
Well,
we'll see.
One or 2 horses short.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to wrap up the segment. Coming up next, the highly anticipated and now approved Yes Guy, No Guy on OverDrive, the radio show on TSN 1050 and TSN 2.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Mail it in Friday. Overdrive. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brother today, Mike DeStefano. Coming up at the top of the hour, Richard Griffin will be by to talk about baseball. The Jays against the Angels tonight at the Dome. And let's just do a quickie update here while we can. Where did I go with that?
The lineup changes tonight?
No, the score. Where did the
Yankees score? The Yankees are losing to the Mets.
Subway Series.
That's what
a
wanted
way to kick off the 4th of July. A little Subway Series action.
Yankees are down 6-5 to the Mets. Juan Soto having a day against his former team with
Love to
3
see
hits,
it.
a homer, a double.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Soto
I really
teeing
love
off.
to see that.
Judge has got a homer, too. It's a slugfest over there in Flushing Meadow.
Twins have a 1-0 lead over the Rays, so this could be another great day for the Blue Jays. In the meantime, a staple of TSN 1050.
Yes guy, no guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, time now for Yes Guy, No Guy, fully approved, fully okayed on Overdrive, the radio and television show. Yes Guy, No Guy number 1, Mr. Feschuk. The Blue Jays will win the AL Eastern Division title this season.
I'm going yes guy. I'm going first division title in, a decade? Or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, you just look at this Yankees team, they've got holes. And I'm not sure they can fill them. The Blue Jays are going to be aggressive at the deadline. The Blue Jays just seem to have, the fact that they're winning without Santander, they're winning, to Taddy's point off the top of the show, with contributions from a lot of unexpected places. The fact they're winning without a great run differential. There's a little bit of magic going on there.
Yeah.
That I think translates well to a team that just has one of those runs that they've been trying to have for an awfully long time and coming up short. But I think this is the year.
Yeah, I'll piggyback that with a big old yes guy on that one. I love what's going on with the Blue Jays right now. You like that or no?
A little throaty.
All right. Wow, that's just.
I tried to do it was my best Rod Black impression of his
right,
yes
yeah.
guy.
Oh,
I tried. I failed.
That was pretty close.
There's only one Roddy Black at the end of the day. But I'm a yes guy on that one. The way that they've played the last month of baseball, they've been one of the best teams in baseball since May 28th, 23-10. They've won 9 of the 10 series since that date. They're first at batting average. They're first in the league with a 9.7 wins above replacement. They don't strike out. They're hitting for power. And interestingly enough, I was taking a look at the Blue Jays' top 5 wins above replacement since this May 28th date in the last 33 games. The names on this list are not who you would have thought they'd be at the beginning of the year. So in the last 33 games, the top 5 players on the Jays in WAR: Ernie Clement, Al Kirk, Addison Barger, George Springer, and Jose Barrios. Absent from that list is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And he has not played poorly. He just hasn't been a $500 million man, but you don't have to be when everyone else around you is picking up and scoring runs and hitting the ball well, and they're getting decent enough pitching from, the 3 guys that you expect. And Scherzer's back now. Eric Lauer pitches tonight. He's been doing really well. Everything's kind of moving and shaking in the right direction. It feels like the vibes are good here in Toronto right now. I hope they can keep it forward. I'm going to say yes, guy.
I like vibe. That's a big part of what I do. The vibe is there. So this is the fun part about sports, is when your team starts to win, and on a nightly basis, you look and you're surprised by who contributes to the win.
Yeah.
Because it rotates all around. We talked about the Hoffman pitching performance 4 to 5 days. There's a guy who's absolutely stretched to his limit and comes up with it. The Lucas at bat that eventually gives the game-winning runs, right? With 14 pitch at bat. Yeah. To see a kid do that and you go, wow, look at that. I mean, it just draws you right in. This is the best part of it. So I'm going to go yes guy on that. Yes guy, no guy number 2. George Springer has been the Blue Jays MVP for the first half, AB.
I'm going to say, this is difficult. I'm going to say yes guy. I will say yes, guy, because he does lead the team with the highest OPS, leads the team in home runs, and leads the team in RBI. So when you lead the team in all three of those categories, it's tough to not be that guy. But there have been so many players that you could argue that could be in that category as well. Alejandro Kirk has been unbelievable. Like, he's a guy who I think should be in there in consideration. But a sneaky one, Ernie Clement. I don't think Ernie Clement's getting nearly enough love for the season that he's having. You look at the last 28 or the last 33 games since that May 28th date. He's got the third highest wins above replacement in baseball. All of baseball behind, I think, is Judge and Cal Raleigh. Ooh. All of baseball. So Ernie Clement should be in that mix there as well. So between those three, you could pick one, I suppose. But when Springer's atop of all those categories for the full season, I think you might have to give him the edge.
Yeah, I think it's a yes guy. I think he's kind of been emblematic of what we're talking about here, because what was the expectation level for George Springer coming into this season? I mean, he's coming off the worst season of his career last year. It looked like,
the expectation for him was, can he stay healthy?
Exactly.
Like, can he stay healthy and hit 240 and give you 15 home runs?
And when you ask that question, a lot of people kind of put their head down and shook their head and said, good luck, right?
Right.
Because it just hasn't been happening for him. So for him, I agree. Like, Alejandro Kirk, to be doing what he's doing as a catcher has been incredible and absolutely off the charts. But I think Springer's kind of, he in a lot of ways is the spirit of this team.
Yeah.
The way he plays with that full tilt enthusiasm and World Series MVP credentials, and that stuff matters, right? And for him to sort of be carrying things, to be leading the team in OPS, to be leading the team in home runs. Obviously, Vladdy. It'd be nice if Vladdy was doing those things.
Yeah.
He should be doing those things. We're going to talk to Richard Griffin later on. Griff has been calling Vladdy the world's most expensive singles hitter, which he kind of is.
I wonder how he feels.
He hits them pretty hard.
Yeah.
They're hard singles.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like I think Springer is a big part of the story about why the Jays are where they are. So he'd be my MVP to date.
I'd like to go with Kirk, but, I mean, it's obvious. I think Springer is the guy. Just for a lot of reasons. I think you have this visual of him running into a wall and missing the next 3 weeks because we've seen that so many times. But he is inspirational. You look at the homers, and the whole team just gets jacked. And I think the jacket, he's going to own the jacket by the end of the season, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's not going to give it back. So it's fun. It takes you back a number of years. And for those of us that have been around decades, it takes you back. Really, I can go back 40 years to 85.
Yeah.
And that season where they the series actually where they clinched against the Yankees at old C&E Stadium. And so winning against the Yankees like that legitimizes everything, taking over first. But it's just great fun to watch, and it's kind of a retro feeling. Yes guy, no guy number 3. Connor McDavid will sign a deal longer than 4 years on his next contract in Edmonton. I guess we had to clarify that it's in Edmonton.
Hey, I got a no guy on this.
Really?
I've got a no guy. Longer than 4 years. Now, do I believe this? I'm not sure. But if I were Connor McDavid's agent, I would be telling him what MJ told us yesterday on OverDrive.
Yeah.
Mike Johnson, our great hockey analyst. MJ made a great case that McDavid's best pitch should be, I'll give you a 2-year deal. You pay me $16 million for 2 years, $32 million total, because A, the cap's going to go up. It's going to be good for me, Connor McDavid, and B, I want to put this management team on the clock to build the team that I need to win my cup in Edmonton. And I think that time pressure of having him on a very short deal would definitely benefit McDavid. I think it would benefit the Oilers to have that urgency that says, we don't have this guy for 8 years. We don't have this guy for 4 more years. We get this guy for 2 more years after this one. We got to make this happen now. If I'm McDavid, I think that's my best interest. I think MJ should be his agent because he sold me on the wisdom of that, and I'm 100% behind it.
But just let me interrupt you. If he does sign 2 years for $32 million, doesn't he get in his own way? Because he soaks up so much of the cap, they can't sign anybody else.
Oh, boo-hoo. Guess what? You get the best player in the world on your team. You got to pay him. You're not going to pay him he's not taking, $8.7 million a la Sidney Crosby.
But if he's doing the 2-year deal, it's so that he can get paid when the cap goes up to $113 million at that point. Like that could be the time where you stretch it and you say, give me the most you can give me. Give me $20 million at that point. I think I'm kind of with Tatman on that one, where if you're only signing for 2 years, I'm not saying pay him, dirt cheap. Like obviously you can still give him, 13, 14 million.
Well, it can't be less than it can't be less than the biggest number in the league, right? So that's right now at 14.
Yeah.
So it can't be less than 14. It's got to be more than 14. So okay, let's just say it's okay. MJ will be mad, but let's say I give on that and I say give me 14.5.
Yeah. Either way, I'm with you in where I think it's probably a shorter term deal. Like I think that is McDavid's way to put pressure on the organization and give them a couple more years to figure it out. But if I'm McDavid, like I'm looking at what's happened in Edmonton this summer, I don't like it.
No.
Like they got pillaged. Like there's not a lot. They added. Really, Mandrew Mangiapane is like the only add of significance that they've made so far. Right, everything else they lost. Evander Kane, they lost Corey Perry. Like they've lost a lot more. Connor Brown. They've lost a lot more than they've gained. So if you're McDavid, you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know if I'm willing to make that extension right now. Like I got to see how the rest of this offseason plays out, but. If you're the Oilers, can you even let McDavid get to opening night without a contract? Like that would be the scariest thing possible for Oiler fans.
It's a recipe for chaos.
I don't know if they can afford that.
They've lost significant players over the last 2 summers, and maybe it rears its ugly head. I'm going to say no guy, but for different reasons. This is the best player in the league. And when we go back to everybody, in this last week saying, here's where I want to stay, but you're not raising the bar. The NHLPA has to be really upset about that. Nobody's raising the bar here. And if this guy can't raise the bar, nobody can, which is bad for business. So I got to believe that he signs for less than 4 at the best dollar figures you say. And he always has to be doing that. He can't lock in so he's canceled out for the next 8 years. Because how is anybody else gonna up the bar?
Yeah, I agree. Look, that to me is that's always been the sort of the agent's argument, right? Now it's not the players' argument. The players in this league have by far they've preferred security. They've preferred the long-term deal. They preferred less drama, less things to worry about, less uncertainty in terms of their future. So, but to me, this is if anybody in this league has certainty about his future and his ability to continue to be a dominant player, it's Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
So, this is about making a statement to say, I believe in this management group, but only to a point, because so far they haven't been able to get it done for me. I've held up my end of the bargain every year. They got to hold up theirs in these next few.
Okay, we'll step out, come back, and continue. Yes guy, no guy. That's now official. We're going to continue. Yes guy, no guy. This is OverDrive on TSN 2, TSN 1050.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Mail it in Friday, Overdrive, TSN 1050, TSN 2. Overdrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. And Mail it in Friday is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy a $15 lunch at BP, where you get an entree, a side, and a drink, and you'll get it all in 20 minutes or less. A fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for a $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza.
Yes guy, no guy.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers. Round 2 of Yes Guy, No Guy on Overdrive, the radio show. And just let me get my my ciphering out. Here we go. Yes Guy, No Guy. I believe we're at number 4. Nikolai Ehlers automatically makes the Carolina Hurricanes the top favorite for the Stanley Cup. Ehlers in Carolina, top favorite for the Stanley Cup.
That's a big no guy. We've discussed this today already. It's like the Panthers are the favorite.
Yeah.
And the fact that
it's got nothing to do with Carolina for me.
Yeah,
nothing to do with
like,
Carolina.
The way the Panthers took
Florida.
out the Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Final, 5-2, 5-0, 6-2. Panthers get one win and then lose 5-3 in Game 5. It was a trouncing, and there's not one player that's going to change that. Maybe it's 2 players because Carolina's also added Keandre Miller on the back end, but Florida's the clear favorites. I mean, barring the only real weakness Florida has is a lack of goaltending depth, and there's so much riding on Bobrovsky staying healthy, AB, but I just don't see them being unseated as the favorite anytime soon, unless they start having a goaltending crisis.
Right, and there's a lot of teams that are in that boat too, right? But no guy, absolutely no guy. It's just because the Florida Panthers are the class. They're the class, and I don't think there's anything that anyone could have done this year that would have made me think otherwise. Going into next season, the Florida Panthers will be the favorites to three-peat, and I believe the books say the same thing. Like I know, interestingly, like right when the Cup final ended, somehow Carolina was the favorite, but that quickly flipped with money coming in on Florida, as it rightfully should be, and now they are the favorite. I think it'll stick that way.
Yeah, Carolina's the second pick, according to FanDuel. I'm going to say no guy, too, because when I looked at their roster, I like their forward unit. It's really good. Blue line doesn't compare to Florida's at all. Neither does the goaltending. So, I mean, that's kind of a big difference, isn't it?
Well, look, they've played them twice in the past 3 years in the Eastern Final, and it's been 8-1 for Florida. So I don't think they're close. I mean, I'm not sure what other evidence you need.
Carolina. Here's the biggest issue I think for Carolina. Nikolai Ehlers, that's a nice ad. They currently have Jesper Kotkaniemi penciled in as their 2C.
Yeah.
You're not gonna win a Stanley Cup with Kotkaniemi as your 2C. I'm sorry. I just don't see it happening.
Against Bennett. Yeah, sorry, guy. That's a sorry guy. Yes guy, no guy. What are we at? Number 5. Easton Cowan will crack the Maple Leafs opening night roster this upcoming season.
Is he going to be on the team? Like, is he going to be with the organization?
The question is, will he crack the opening night roster?
I'm going to say no guy. No guy. Because I think, A, he could be involved in some sort of trade and not even be an option. And B, I look at the roster right now, and there's, like, where's he going to slot in? I don't see a spot where he fits on the roster as constructed, and we believe, Treliving came out and said, he still wants to add another top 6 forward. So that's going to push guys down even more. Where's the spot for him on this roster? I don't see one. Unless he absolutely wows in camp, which is a possibility. It's not, a 0% chance, but right now I think it's less likely than more likely he is not on this roster opening night.
Dave?
I mean, I'm a no guy too. I think because I think if they're serious about adding another top 6 winger, as Mark Masters pointed out, what else are they trading for that top 6 winger? There's no easy trade bait in their roster right now. The only probably if they don't make that trade, maybe he beats out Nick Robertson for that third line winger spot, right? Maybe Nick Robertson's no longer.
I don't have him penciled in on the open night lineup either.
No,
okay.
He's the RFA with arbitration, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he may not be, but I mean, there's guys who've fallen in out of Craig Berube's favor, who he theoretically beat out, but the idea that he's going to do it at age 20 with puck management issues, hard to imagine.
Yeah.
So I'd say no.
I got to say, I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to say yes, guy, just because at an opening night roster, I mean, it's October. If you can't look at him at that point, then the whole season's in jeopardy. And I just believe he's a much better prospect than that. So I'm going to go against the grain here and just barring any trade that we don't know anything about.
Optimistic guy.
Yeah, optimistic, a happy guy, glass full guy. Let's go with that one. Coming up next, we'll have Richard Griffin and then Bruce Boudreau. This is Overdrive on TSN 1050, and you're watching on TSN 2.
It's Mail It In Friday.
Yeah, hi, it's Bill Lumberg again. Yeah, it isn't a half day or anything like that.
This is OverDrive.
It's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
With Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Mail It In Friday. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brother Mike DiStefano with you. OverDrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score, which would be the Mets 6-5 over the Yankees. That is done. Jay's getting set to take on the Angels at the Dome. And what's going on with the Rays? They are leading Minnesota 2-1. That's in the top of the seventh in Minnesota. So that's what's on the table. Jays have the game and a half lead now over the Yankees, pending the outcome of tonight's game, and would still, well, they'd be a half game up on the Rays if the Rays won.
I mean, the fact that it's July 4th and we're talking about the Jays being atop of the AL East is still remarkable to me. Considering where this team was at one point, not even that long ago, like mid-May, we were talking about this team, potentially being sellers at the deadline. All right, should you move on from Bo Bichette? What could you get for could Chris Bassett get you a haul? Do you consider moving on from Kevin Gausman, who's only got 1 year left on the deal? And now it's all right. The Jays could be one of the most aggressive teams at the trade deadline, and they could add some decent pieces. A nice bat, probably get one more arm in there, maybe a starter, definitely a bullpen guy. I think that the Jays have set themselves up with this great stretch, 33 games, 23-10 in that stretch. They got themselves at the top of the division. They were once 8 games back of the Yankees, and now 1.5 up, and they closed that gap pretty darn quick.
It's theirs to lose, right?
It's amazing. Like, you think about it, like we were talking about how this team was lucky that the Maple Leafs were in the second round of the playoffs because nobody was really paying attention.
said nobody for a few years.
Yeah, and because that one stretch they lost, like, I think it was 8 of 9. They were just
they lost like 16-0, 11-0. Like they were getting skunked in a lot of those early games.
It was absolutely ugly, and now.
Well, right before this stretch, they got crushed by the Rays. And everyone kind of remembers that Rays, that
13-0
series.
13-0.
Crushed.
May 25th.
And then they played the Texans, and there were some low-scoring games, but they won that series. But since that last game of the Texans series, they've gone on and they've won 23.
Texans are a football
33.
team, by the way, but that's
Texas
not to
Rangers.
nitpick.
Sorry, the Texas Rangers.
That's okay. They're Texans, though.
They are Texans.
They were Texans. You were technically correct. They were Texans.
The Texas Rangers, but they've been on fire ever since. Did you guys notice? Apparently, not a single Blue Jay, despite being the hottest team in baseball, they're getting contributions all up and down the lineup. Not a single Blue Jay was named to the American League Team of the Month.
How can that even be?
That's what
they are the team of the month.
What? Not a single player named to the AL Team of the Month for the month of June.
Disrespect.
Total disrespect.
How many Yankees are on that team?
It's a good question. I could look that up in a moment, but I'd imagine Judge would be there for sure.
Yeah.
At the very least, but
maybe it goes to the point that the Jays are the team of the month.
Could be a lot
by committee.
Could be a lot of Tigers on that team.
Which is true. It is kind of by committee of what that team has been able to do.
Although Springer's had a hell of a month. Kirk's had a hell of a month. I mean, obviously there's guys must be playing better than them, but seems like a stretch.
I don't know about you, Dave or AB, but I love, we do narratives. That's what we do. And when the narrative changes, I love that moment because I just felt that, to AB's point, when we're talking about in mid-May, we're talking about the same narrative that we talked about for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And the line was, you said 2025 was going to be the year, and it's a complete dud so far, but now it is.
Yeah.
Now it is the year.
Hey, man, all that, we were mocking Ross Atkins for all that stuff about internal improvement and, the idea that they felt like they were on the cusp of something big here, and there was just no evidence of that, right? There was just no evidence they were on the cusp of something big. But what they've done in these last 31, 32 days is just, they've reversed that thinking. They've made you believe that this is a team you can believe in. And, maybe, hey, we all know, trends come and go. There's when there's progression, there's regression in baseball, and that's coming.
6 weeks is a nice sample size, though.
It is.
And 6 weeks is pretty well how long this stretch has been, 33 games. It is a nice little sample size that the Maple Leafs have, or the Blue Jays have here.
Oh, guy.
All over the place
there,
here.
guy.
All over the place here. But, like, you run down the stat pack since that May 28th date, 282 batting average, which is first in baseball, 808 OPS, second in baseball. They have 46 home runs, seventh in baseball, 194 runs scored, second in baseball, 9.7 wins above replacement, first in baseball, and they have the lowest strikeout rate in the majors, 15.3%.
That's impressive.
Like that's really impressive, and it's the most by like 3%. Like the next is I think the Royals, the Rays, and it's at like 18%. So this is a team, the approach by everyone on the roster from top to bottom has been outstanding. You keep pointing to that Nathan Lucas 14-pitch at-bat.
Yeah.
Like these guys are hard outs. Every single one of these players over the last 6 weeks, it has been impossible to get these guys out.
They're sort of everything you didn't think they could be, but they are.
Yeah.
Let's get further context on this. Richard Griffin is here. GriffsThePitch.com is where you'll find his work. Griff, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Good. We're just, brimming with optimism here. So I guess the ultimate question is, how legitimate is this and how sustainable is it?
Well, for me, it's we got to wait until the All-Star game, the All-Star break. It's a tremendous 4-game sweep of the Yankees, but now you've got a chance for a letdown. You've got the Angels for 3, then the White Sox, and then finally the Athletics before the All-Star break. And so that's 3 teams that are 48 games under 500. And don't forget that in this 23-10 stretch, the Jays did have a 3-6 9-game series that ended with 2 out of 3 losses to the White Sox. So I'm reserving my unbridled optimism for the All-Star break. And you know that is 2 weeks before the trade deadline. So we'll hear the rumor mills out of New York with the Yankees, who they're always looking to make a deal, especially after being embarrassed at Rogers Center. So we'll see. It is a time for optimism, something that happened that nobody would have believed at the end of May, and here we are. But I'm still holding back until the All-Star break.
Despite that, though, I mean, a massive series, a sweep of the Yankees, the first time in Jays history they've completed a home 4-game sweep of the team from New York. And just like how big of a statement was that for this Jays team, kind of telling the world and maybe even Michael Kay specifically, we are the class of this division.
Yeah, it's a huge step forward and a huge slap in the face for the most celebrated, cheering hometown media in baseball. That's the New York Yankees media. It's the biggest small town media in North America. And it just to see Michael Kay go on about run differential and these aren't a true and then finish the sweep was really sweet. And I like individual. In fact, I love individual players on the Blue Jays because I worked with them for 4 years. But the team, let's just reserve judgment for now. But it was really nice to see because I also do not like the Yankees.
That's a good way to put it, Griff. Well, let's talk about the guy who's sort of been leading the charge here, Griff, and it's an unexpected charge from George Springer, given he's coming off last season, which was by a lot of statistics the worst season of his career. Age 35, it looked like it wasn't going to be a nice forecast for the remainder of his career in Toronto, and yet there he is at the top of the standings with 15 home runs, leading the team, 891 OPS, leading the team. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I felt the need. We recorded an Exit Philosophy podcast this morning, and I felt the need to apologize publicly to George Springer for saying he was washed, that he was done. We did say specifically that he should be moved out of the leadoff spot, which he has been. I heard your guys' discussion earlier about the MVP of the Blue Jays thus far, and I would go Kirk, Bichette, and then Springer.
Okay.
Because he was being carried through the first little while. The player who would be the hardest to replace is Alejandro Kirk. when you go wins above replacement, well, if the replacement is Tyler Heineman, then his wins above shoots up because you can't afford to lose Alejandro Kirk out of that lineup. Meanwhile, you can afford, especially as you guys were mentioning, the performance of Nathan Lucas. And then they've had other outfielders come up and do a job briefly, albeit, but, they've done a job. So you can credit the injury list early in the season for discovering who could play, for discovering who could step up. Addison Barger didn't make the opening day roster, and here he is leading the way as much as George Springer is. And you've got Ernie Clement, who I think his supreme role is as a super sub at third, short, and second. He doesn't play first base. He plays first base, but not very well. And I think his optimum is 120, 130 games with someone else starting at those positions and him just playing the field. But you discovered all of this because of injuries to Santander and Andres Jimenez and others. And in the past few years, when there's been an injury, they've been bewitched, bothered, and bewildered and not been able to do that. And that's the key to me, is the ability of some guys that already existed in this clubhouse on this roster to step up.
Griff, I like the way you described that, because that's really what we're seeing. In the past, injuries have happened, and not only the Jays have had this issue, but others, and they go south. And for whatever reason, and we don't know what it is, this year the pieces that have had to step up have done that. And I think that's what really draws people into this story. Kirk's a great example. I don't know what you would expect out of him, but he's just done a really great job and really engaging to watch. And some of these other people that we've talked about, Barger, Lucas, and some of the others that you didn't know were going to do it have done it. Springer, who's been injured in the past, Bichette, who's been injured, have done it. You thought Vladdy was going to carry the gravy train here, but he's finding his way. And Santander, well, he's injured. So that's really the intrigue in this team, is that you don't know who's going to do it, but you're pretty confident somebody is.
Well, Tapman, I remember being on your show earlier in the season in April or early May, and we're talking about Alejandro Kirk, who was struggling at the plate at the time. And I reminded you that the reason he made the team originally was bat-to-ball skills, was his offense. It wasn't his defense. And there was a lot of the fan base saying, well, we need a catcher who can hit. Well, what about Danny Jansen? Why'd they let Danny Jansen go? But he has returned to what earned him a spot on this team in the first place. And I think that's a great thing. The one thing that I'm not sure you guys discussed it, but at the trade deadline that I really believe they have to go out and get is an experienced veteran starting pitcher. And it doesn't have to be somebody who's locked in for extra seasons after this one. It has to be someone who can help them down the stretch, because they're just rolling the dice with Max Scherzer going out every fifth day. And Eric Lauer is not going to maintain the statistics that he's got right now. Today they brought up Lazaro Estrada, who's a right-hander that a lot of people haven't heard of, but he can eat innings if Lauer slows down, or if Max Scherzer is injured again. He keeps flexing that hand, and it's after 50, 60 pitches, and you go, uh-oh. And so they need at the deadline, and that's a month from now, less than a month from now, they need to find another starter, and I think they'll be fine.
At the deadline, is a replacement for Anthony Santander something they're going to have to think about? He was just placed on the 60-day IL. Is he someone that the Jays can rely upon for once he gets back into the fold, that he can be a contributor to this ball club? Or are they going to need to go out and get another kind of power bat to kind of supplement what Santander might not be able to bring?
No, I think that they can they can, the 60 days is going to expire when he's ready to play. So that's not an issue. It's just getting a roster spot for Estrada. But they've locked him in for 5 years, and I think they're going to roll the dice and stay with him. And I think I've seen so many times that there were injuries, there were extra twists and turns, injuries that affected a player's performance early in a season that nobody talks about. And when they come back, they're 100% to what they were. Because this guy hit 44 home runs a year ago, and you're expecting the power that you didn't see early in the season. They're committed to him. I do not believe that they will go out and get another experienced power RBI bat. I think that they'll roll it. I mean, one of the depths of this Blue Jays team is the outfielders, and we talked about Nathan Lucas, and there's other guys who have been up and down and proved that as a fourth or fifth outfielder, they can do the job. And Miles Straw, that everybody made fun of because he was like an expensive throw-in so they could get money to sign Roki Sasaki, and that didn't happen. But he's been contributing, and he's been an adequate defensive replacement for Dalton Varsho, who's a Gold Glover. So, yeah, no, I don't think they need to go out and get another outfielder. And to me, George Springer is going to take up the bulk of the DH spots when down the stretch, just to continue his good health and keep him in the middle of that order as long as he's hot.
So, Griff, your MVP, team MVP rankings to date, to go over them again: Alejandro Kirk, number 1, Bo Bichette, number 2, Springer, number 3. This panel had Springer as the unanimous MVP, so we'll disagree on that. But talk to me about why you'd put Bichette at number 2. He's been nicked up. He'll be back in the lineup tonight. He pinch hit last night. In this contract year, he had a lost season last year to injury. What has impressed you so much about Bo Bichette?
Well, when they moved Springer out of the leadoff spot, they needed somebody there, and I didn't think Bichette was the right guy because he swings at anything that's close to the plate, and you want a guy working the count at that point. But he's done the job batting leadoff. The only games that he's missed are the last 4. The only starts that he's missed are the last 4. And only one of those previous was as a DH. And this guy was among the top 3 in base hits. He's been playing probably some of his best defense, which was a low bar to begin with, but it's still nevertheless. And I just think that for the first 87, 88 games that he has been more valuable to me, to this team, than a hot and cold George Springer.
So what does that say about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Does it make your top 3? And he's the one who got paid this past offseason. And I was looking to see over this stretch since May 28th. That's kind of that date we look at. He's not even in the top 5 of the Blue Jays in wins above replacement. Like, what have you made of Vladdy's season since getting that big contract?
Well, it's like arguing whether the Mona Lisa is the MVP of the Louvre. It doesn't move, doesn't do anything. But still, it's the face of the franchise. And he is the face of the franchise. When he signed the contract, fans turned and paid attention and said, hey, these guys are serious. Even the clubhouse turned and paid attention and said, hey, these guys are serious. So last year around the same time, he had 10 to 12 home runs, and he ended up with 30. I believe that is a trend that we're going to see again. He still, by the end of the season, probably won't be the team MVP. But if he is the team MVP, they will not have won the division. They may make the playoffs. If they played 500 ball the rest of the way, they'd have 87 wins, which will be enough in sort of a mediocre middle of the pack in the American League. But they want to win the division. And if he's the MVP of this team at the end of the season, given the 3-month head start he's given to Kirk and some of the others, then this team's not going to win.
Griff, in terms of what the Jays would part with at the deadline, where are you on that? And is there any possibility Manoah reappears?
Yes for Manoah. I think that also Trey Savage, the guy that they drafted first round last season, I think that he started in Dunedin. He started at low A, went to Vancouver, where he learned what it felt like to have loonies and toonies in your pocket. And now he's in New Hampshire. And he's just tearing it up. The only thing he's not doing is pitching deep into ball games. But at 22 years old, it's not like he's 19 or just turning 20. He's been around. He's a college junior. I think he may help. Manoah may help. And if they get somebody at the deadline, they'll be covered, because I really don't think that Max Scherzer is going to take the ball 14 more times the rest of this season.
But what do you think they're going to move out?
Oh, they've got that surplus of outfielders we talked about, and there are teams, if you look through MLB trade rumors. There are teams that are looking for outfielders. There are arms at some of the lower levels that they'd be willing to part with. Not Cal Steven, who's another right-hander from the draft last year. Not Johnny King, who's a left-hander high schooler, just turned 19, pitched in Dunedin the other day. And not Yasavage, and not Ricky Tiedemann. But there's arms down there that would tempt teams that are looking to restock their farm system. So I'd say surplus arms and outfielders would be enough to get a veteran starter with no years beyond 2025. I think that would be the case.
So, Griff, you're not ready to get too excited about this pennant race just yet. You're the old head. You're saying wait till the All-Star break, wait to see if this is real. But if we're jumping ahead, like if you have to handicap the other two teams that are apparently going to be the threat to beat the Blue Jays out for the American League East, who do you like between the Rays and the Yankees?
Well, Dave, the Rays have had the advantage of playing probably 2/3 of their games at home because they don't want them playing in the stinking hot middle of the summer in Tampa where it rains every day. I rented a convertible one time for a trip to Miami. I wondered why there were so many in the parking lot available. It rained every day when I drove to the stadium in Miami. So I know that as a fact. There was never any BP. So I think that the Rays have had the advantage, the scheduling advantage, so I don't believe they can do it. I don't like them anyway. And the only team they really dominate is the Blue Jays, which is the only way that they can win. The Yankees are the ones that I worry about. The Red Sox, that clubhouse went into a spiral when they traded Devers, and the GM and the manager are not where they were a year ago even. And so I'm looking at the Yankees. I'm looking at the Yankees at the All-Star break, watching them reload, watching them they'll line themselves up for the second half, and then at the trade deadline making a significant move. So they're the team that I worry about, and probably historically rightly so.
Griff, I think we're done. I think we've exhausted the question supply. Is there anything we didn't ask you?
That's an old journalism trick, and I don't do that anymore.
Hey, how's it? By the way, how's your manager's career going?
Oh man, we play at all the ballparks. I'm in the Perfect Game Collegiate Summer League, and we're not very good. But I'm managing my ass off, but we're just not very good. But it's fun going to all the ballparks from the New York Penn League, Jamestown, what I used to write about as an Expos PR guy. Our team was there. Batavia, Newark, Auburn. It's great. Ballparks that I've written about and never been to, and now I'm there and I'm managing, and I love it.
Griff, I was told to say, go Ironbacks, go.
Perfect. I appreciate it. plenty of tickets still available.
Griff, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, anytime.
Richard Griffin, griffsthepitch.com, and the Exit Philosophies, the podcast. Always great to talk to Griff.
I just love how he publicly hates every other team in the AL East. Just like, I hate the Yankees, I hate the Rays, screw the Red Sox. Griff's the best.
He really is. Yeah, he really is. He was a great colleague at the Toronto Star. He was by far the best PR guy the Blue Jays ever had.
Yeah.
And now I'm sure he's an outstanding manager, even though his team's not doing so well in the Perfect Game Collegiate League.
I will say this. He brings up a very solid point when he talks about Alejandro Kirk being the team's MVP. Like, when you put together offense and defense, what Kirk has been able to do behind the plate, pitch framing, I think he leads the league in thrown outs as well. Like, Kirk probably is this team's MVP. I'm gonna revert to what I said earlier, and I'm gonna jump on Griff's train on that one, because even if you look at like the underlying numbers from Alejandro Kirk this season, like the offense is clearly there. He's in the 96th percentile in expected batting average. He's in the 97th percentile in hard hit rate. He never chases. His guy never strikes out. The 98th percentile in strikeouts this year. and that's to go with him being the best pitcher in baseball when it comes to the actual catching position. 100th percentile in blocks above average, 100th percentile in pitch framing, and he's in the 97th percentile in caught stealing above average. So the guy's getting it done on both sides of the plate. I think Kirky needs to get that love.
I believe I said I'd like to give it to Kirk, but then I
should have stuck to your guns.
I should have.
Man, should have stuck to your guns.
See, this is what happens when you try to get along with people.
Yeah. You don't have to get along with us. We don't take it personally. Go your own way, Tat, man.
Okay, I am. I'm going my own way now. That's a commercial break. Coming up next, Bruce Boudreau, the TSN hockey analyst, former coach, former player. He'll be with us. Going to revert back to ice talk. But on the way out, thanks for joining us, and stay with us on OverDrive, TSN 1050, TSN 2. Mail It In Friday on OverDrive. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brother Mike DiStefano here to officially mail it in. Mail It In Friday is brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP where you get an entree, a side, and a drink, and you get it all in 20 minutes or less. A fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. So see you at the $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza. So a couple of things on the way into Bruce Boudreau. Scherzer, I don't think we mentioned this earlier, will start for the Jays tomorrow. And Toews, back with Winnipeg, spoke today, and he was speaking about it. Actually, one of our listeners and viewers wanted some Winnipeg talk, so I think we fulfill that quota right here. Toews back with the in the NHL with the Winnipeg Jets, and here he is talking about his return.
I'd gotten to a point where I'd pretty much needed to let myself completely get off a timeline to return. So in my mind, I'd kind of accepted in a way that I might not play again. And I think that was a challenging thing to do, but at the same time, a very healthy thing to do, to just like wake up every day and not think of, this is where we're going. So, but I'd say probably as the year went along, I got stronger every month, and I was working out, taking care of myself, but also just enjoying life. And I'd say these last 5 or 6 months, things have really trended in a direction. Since I started skating back in February and March, those were the moments where I'm like, okay, still got the hands are still there, the feet will catch up, and things have slowly gotten better since then. So really happy about where I'm at.
Jonathan Toews getting set to return to the NHL with Winnipeg. You saw him with the number 19, the Winnipeg Jets jersey. Let's bring in Bruce Boudreau, TSN hockey analyst, former NHL player, coach, and has done a lot of things in hockey in his entire life. Bruce, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. Good. It's a good day.
In terms of the Toews comeback, I mean, just a fascinating story where everybody wishes this guy well. He was such a great player. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you think of Jonathan Toews, you got to think of a winner, and that's what I think of him. I wouldn't say single-handedly, but we played Chicago in the conference final a few years ago, and every time they got down, they'd put him on the ice, and he'd seem to do something magical to get them back in it, and they eventually beat us in 7 games, and they won the cup, and I think he was the essential guy, that the reason that they won that. So when I think of him, I think of just a winner, and that's, to me, what he was.
Yes. So, Bruce, when you think about just the reality of what he's going through here, where he's 37 years old, last played a game 2 years ago. It'll be 2.5 years by the time the season starts that he last touched the NHL ice. What are the odds in your mind that he can actually rekindle that sort of pedigree as a winner who can actually help a team compete in this league?
Yeah, you know what? When you say his age and you sit there and you think he's missed 2 years, it's hard to come back. But I mean, this is what makes great stories and especially great athletes is the guys that are capable of doing that. I really believe that there's not a lot of guys that could do it, but watching him over all the years, I do believe that he wouldn't come back if he didn't think he had a chance to be a real viable player. I don't think he'd come back if Chevy or somebody from Winnipeg wasn't watching him skate somewhere privately in Winnipeg, and he came up and said, hey, he can do it. So I think he's going to be fine. I don't know if he could do it for more than a year or two, but I mean, listen, Marchand's 37. He seems to be getting better. I mean, Corey Perry scored 19 goals last year and 10 in the playoffs, and he's, 60? So
nearly.
So, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but there are these great feel-good stories, and I'm hoping Jonathan Toews is one of those feel-good stories.
Brucey, here in Toronto, everybody obviously following the Mitch Marner saga, and I'm sure that you followed it quite closely as well. But I'm just curious, you look back on what Brad Treliving has done the last week. It's still an incomplete offseason, but to this point, where are you at with the Maple Leafs, on their quest to try and get over the hump?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, follow the Leafs quite closely, or I think I do anyway. But they're not better today than they were a month ago. I mean, that's just, Nick Roy is they've wanted a third-line center I think he can fill the bill between third but he played a lot of fourth line center when Vegas was a really good balanced team. So I think he's a good player. But losing Mitch Marner, they haven't, and they probably won't, and it's hard to do, replace somebody, that's going to be that good a penalty killer, that good on the power play, that good, setting up your number one scorer in Austin, who will probably hopefully be healthy by the time the season starts and stuff. So they haven't, the other little things they've done. For example, Michelli. You know what? For whatever reason, I followed him in Arizona because his first year he did pretty good, and he was an American League guy getting called up, a smaller type guy that did okay. I just don't see him moving any needle, to be quite frankly. I don't think he got a point in Montreal last year. He's a tough guy. But I don't, and he grew up, I guess, right around the corner from where I lived. So you like him to do good, but I don't think that's a real big improvement or help for the team. So it's going to be interesting where they go. I think Matthew Nyes is going to be closing in on 40 goals next year. I think if Stolarz can stay healthy, I think they got a real good goaltending tandem. But as far as them being better right now, they're not, in my mind. I really trust Brad Treliving to also know this, and he's going to do what it takes to make them better. But right now, they're not better than they were when they lost in 7 games to Florida.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even if they'd re-sign Marner, they still had to be better, right?
Yeah, they would have had. And if they had to re-sign Marner, they're still not better than Florida. Yeah. But, I mean, I think if they stay the same, they'll be hard-pressed to be in first place, quite frankly, at the end of next year. And Marner means so much. I don't care what you say about the playoffs. He still averaged a point a game, I think, in the playoffs. But at the same time, they had to change something. They couldn't go with the same group next year after losing basically for all the years that those guys have been together. So they had to do something. I just don't think they've done enough right now. And I hope that somewhere down the road there's another trade to get a top 6 forward, because Nick Robertson's not going to do it either, I think, be able to do the job. But we don't know. We'll see. I still think it's a long summer yet, and teams will be talking right up till the end of September before they start. So we'll see.
Hey, Bruce, I'm sure you've heard a lot of unconventional ideas about how to help a team get over the hump. What did you make of the Maple Leafs' decision to bring in a horse trainer and apparently an unwieldy colt to show their prospects this week? I guess with an eye, Haley Wickenheiser said, the assistant general manager of player development, said that it was an eye toward helping the players understand how to control emotion and some leadership aspect as well. What did you make of all that?
Okay, well, evidently, I'm not in Toronto, and I didn't hear that. But on first upon hearing that, I'm thinking that's the biggest crock of you-know-what that I've ever heard.
I think that makes 4 of us, Brucey.
You know what? We can talk analytics, and I believe in them and that. But, I mean, the bottom line is hockey. You can tell me what you want. It's still won by winning battles, one-on-one battles, outwilling the other team, and playing together. And you know what? I got to dig into this horse thing because I've never heard anything like that. And the minute those horses put on skates, I guarantee all 4 legs are going in different directions.
Bit of a visual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bruce. But I guess when the player development department starts grasping at straws for different ideas. I mean, have you been involved in those conversations where someone thinks they're creative and wants to try something outside the box with the hockey team?
Not that far outside the box, I don't think. I mean, we have different ideas. I mean, at development camp and and such. But you know what? If it works, hey, listen, I'm all for it. But I mean, I don't know where the idea came from, and I really haven't studied the idea, so I really am not a good good person to believe in it or not. I just think it sounds like the stupidest thing I ever heard from afar.
Well, you spent a long time, in the NHL, obviously behind spent many years on the coach's bench, many different franchises, and I'm just curious to get your, pick your brain a little bit, like, maybe get us in the headspace of where Berube might be at and all the other coaches around the NHL. Like, what is that timeline between, when the season ends, all leading up to July 1 free agency, where your team is going under a transformation? Like, what's it like for the head coach in that situation? Like, does the coach have some say in the matter? Are they involved in those types of discussions? Like, what was that experience like for you in that really wild week that most NHL teams transform?
Well, I think with Craig it's a little bit different, because since they got rid of Shanahan, then him and Berube, or him and Brad are working much closer together, so he might have some say. Like, I mean, I think it all depends on the relationship with the GM. If you've got a good relationship with the GM, he will ask you, or and he, like, for example, when I was with Chuck Fletcher or George McPhee, I would be in on meetings and that, and so my voice could be heard. But a lot of times it's not. And in the summer, I had nothing to do with. I could give my ideas on, hey, listen, we're not strong at this position or that position, and then they go out and do it. But there's really not a lot for coaches to do in the summer, even though their mind never really completely winds down, because as soon as they might have a little bit of July off, but once they start, once August starts up, they're coming again, and they're probably getting back ready to get back into town and get the coaches together and prepare for the next year. So there's not a lot of downtime anymore.
Bruce, I hate to nail Mr. Treliving on his statement about changing the DNA, but based on what you know about the Leafs, when the general manager says changing the DNA, what does that mean to you?
To be quite honest, when I first thought of it, I thought I'd get bigger and tougher. And I don't know if that's what they need, or if that's the case. Just thinking right now, and not that I'm just answering your question. I would think that things, change the heart of the team, and I don't know if they need that change. I'm not there, but that's the first thing that I thought of when I first heard that statement of talking about the DNA.
Okay, so, I mean, everybody understands how Florida plays. This is a really, really good, gritty, tough, just any word that you would associate with truculence, Florida has in overabundance. If you're not built that way, how do you transition to that, or do you even try to do that?
You know what? You can't change the players' spots a lot of times. You could make them a little more defensive. You can't make them tougher. You can't make them want to get into the corners more. I think, you got to find those players somewhere. If you want to change the DNA and you've got a player or change, if the DNA is even the right word, if you want to change the type of player you want, you're going to have to change some of the guys you have on your team to other teams and to get that kind of player. That's the way you change it. I mean, if you, I would have thought that they might have really wanted a guy like Bennett or Marchand, even though once Marchand signed his contract, I didn't think anybody'd sign him for 6 years. But in Florida, they get away with an awful lot of things. But I think a guy like Sam Bennett would have been somebody that, I would have really liked to have gone after. But when you're happy in one situation, it's hard to pluck those guys out of a great situation, and they could, and they weren't given the time because they weren't allowed to talk to them until July 1, and Bill Zito did a great job in getting them all done before then.
Bruce, you spent time a couple of years in Vancouver. You know the group pretty well. How surprised were you to see Brock Besser, go to market, but then ultimately decide to just circle back and re-sign in Vancouver on July 1st?
I was shocked, like everybody else. I mean, I think everybody was shocked because they've been talking for 2 years about trading him. didn't, from what I gather. I know when I was there, they had asked the agent even, they said, hey, listen, if you can make a trade or facilitate a trade with Brock, go ahead and do it. And then at the trade deadline this year, they said they got no good offers. And so I don't know whether it was Brock's love for Vancouver that wanted him to bring him back, or whether he didn't get, his agent didn't get the offers that he thought he would be getting somewhere else, and decided to come back to Vancouver. So, I mean, I'm surprised. I mean, but when you look at what they've lost as offensive scoring power in the last couple of years, it's hard to lose a potential 40-goal scorer and not get anything back in return. So I'm glad he came back. I hope he has a great year, but pretty surprised that it happened.
Bruce, thanks very much. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend.
Hey, and you guys enjoy your summer. There's not much more left, I don't think. So, I mean, as far as Leafs talk or hockey talk for a little while, so enjoy it, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk again next year.
Absolutely. Leafs talk is like rust. It never sleeps.
No, yeah, we'll find a way to chat Leafs sometime mid-August. Doesn't matter.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks, Bruce.
Talk to you later.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bruce Boudreau, TSN hockey analyst, former coach, played with the Leafs, played with the in the Leafs farm system. He's been around, that's for sure. I like what he said. I mean, so everybody wants to chase Florida. You can't become the Panthers. I mean, that would take years. You can't do that. I mean, you have to sort of let it run its course.
Years, and you'd have to change your tax codes, which probably not.
But I'm thinking back to because they remind me a lot of the Islanders, and I know that goes back a lot of decades. And really, the Islanders just had to wear out.
Right. Well, and the Islanders, funny enough, were the last team to go to 4 Cup finals in a row. Right.
5.
Yeah, I know, but the last team to do 4. I mean, they did it 5 times, but Florida, of course, has a chance to go to 4 in a row for the first time since that. Or that Islanders team.
Yeah,
you're right. There's a lot of similarities there, and ultimately, you're right. Like this team, they've built it on some veteran guys that you assume will peter out, run out of steam eventually. Just hasn't happened yet. We were all thinking last year that maybe the Stanley Cup hangover.
It started the playoffs. Somebody said that. At least several people did.
Well,
great theory that had really no basis in reality.
Yeah, you just think eventually, like they've played so much hockey, but they got. I mean, lucky's probably not the word, but like Matt Tkachuk didn't have to play hockey down the stretch. He was injured, granted, so you never want that to happen. But then Aaron Ekblad had a little 20-game hiatus to rest his legs and be ready to go for the playoffs. So they had a couple of guys who were like horses for that team. Even Brad Marchand missed some time when he first got there, and maybe allowed him to recharge those legs a little bit and allowed them to
don't say horses around Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah,
he wasn't high on that idea.
I liked how he summed it up, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll step out. Coming up next, Best Bets. This is OverDrive. Thanks for asking on TSN 2 and TSN 1050. Mail It In Friday, about to come to a grinding halt. Jim Taddy, Dave Feschuk, and Al's brother Mike DiStefano with you. Just updating AB before we get to the best bets. Rays and Twins are tied at 3, going to the bottom of the ninth, the game in Minnesota. So an opportunity there for the Jays to maintain if the Twins can come up with something.
Would be nice. Would be nice, and go up a full 2 games on both the Rays and the Yankees. So
could be
if they can get the dub tonight.
You have the best bets?
Ah, yes. Today's best bets, powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Let's ride the hot bat with a 2-leg Springer parlay. He's been on fire, coming off a generational series against the Yankees. I have him getting 2+ bases again tonight and recording a run for the Blue Jays. He's hitting second in the lineup. Bichette, Barger behind him. They've been swinging the bat really well lately. You can get that at +125. So Springer, 2+ bases, and a run tonight. Today's best bets, powered by FanDuel. The first inning means as much as the ninth when you bet baseball on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly, 18+ and physically located in Ontario.
So do we think the winning streak continues? Do they win the series? Do they sweep the Angels?
I mean, Griff brought up the possibility of a letdown against a perceived weaker opponent. You know, they've had some letdowns against the White Sox earlier in the season.
Yeah.
They've had some moments where they haven't played the teams they should beat, although they did sweep the Athletics. So I sort of see where he's coming from after the euphoria of sweeping the Yankees. You could see them taking the foot off the gas a little bit here. So I'm not penciling in the sweep against the Angels, but you got to think they keep it rolling to a large degree.
Yeah, I mean, you have Lauer going tonight, Scherzer tomorrow, and then roll into Barrios? Barrios will be next after that, or Gosman? One of the two. We'll take the ball in the third game. So, you like the pitching matchup, and let's hope that the bats can stay alive. That's all they need. As long as the bats can keep swinging the way that they have been, they're going to be in ball games and be able to win ball games.
Slightly less than 60 seconds. So of the people that you didn't think that would contribute that are, who's your favorite Blue Jay that way?
Well, it's got to be Springer. I mean, it's by far Griff is publicly apologizing to George Springer on his podcast for saying he was washed. I mean, I think a lot of us were saying the exact same thing. What can you expect? Very little. Can he stay healthy? Probably not. And here he is leading the team.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 guys that come to mind for me. Ernie Clement, who's been unbelievable over the last month, third in the entire league in wins above replacement. And Addison Barger wasn't on the roster opening night, and he's been unbelievable. So I like Barger and Clement as well.
I would go with Barger. I like those stories where the guy comes out of nowhere. So 10 seconds left. AB, have a great weekend. You're with us a couple days next week, and me and Dave are going to drive this thing into the ground every day next week.
It'll be a mail it in Monday through Friday.
Absolutely. So we'll chat then.